All rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Alvarez.
Here.
Councilman Cullen.
Here.
Councilwoman Eckhart.
Here.
Councilwoman Hudak.
Here.
Supervisor Head.
Here. Notation of exits in the front and the rear. Electronic device, please put it on vibrate. I make a motion to come out of the executive session. No action was taken.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First item on this evening is a public hearing continued on the farmers market. Make a motion to open the public hearing and waive the reading of the notice.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone here to add any additional comments pertaining to the farmers market? UCP is here tonight. Melissa, Howard, how are you tonight? I didn't recognize the lady that waved.
Don't recognize?
I can't see my,
Casey.
I haven't seen her, I haven't seen you in 10 years. 10 years.
Pay attention to what you're doing at the farmer's market.
Wow. Good for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Is anyone here to speak further to that item? Now, I believe that you may want to be making comments after the public hearing, but now nothing is being said. So if you have any recommendations after you've reread it, forward it to the legislature. Now I'm thinking of KC with the legislature. Forward it to the town. And if not, we're going to put it on the next agenda, and they can always be, Casey, you want to make a comment, just come up to the mic if you don't mind, please.
I really have more questions, I'm sorry.
Okay, not a problem.
I did
All the way up,
Just so
because
people
everyone has
can
to
see
hear
you
you.
at home.
This feels like home. Do you need me to say Casey Anderson, former Putnam resident, farmer's market aficionado? How do you do, everyone?
And where are you now?
I'm in Citrus County, Florida, most
Wow.
of the year, but I've been, I would like to think, instrumental with the Hudson Valley Regional Market, especially this last year when we rolled the Brewster Farmers Market into the Hudson Valley.
Okay.
And I especially appreciated your introduction to the legislation, saying in order to support access to good nutrition, food, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a good place to start from. Reading it, I didn't have a sense of what the fees might be.
The fees will be very minimal. Matter of fact, I think I was going to work on the number. It's minimal. But there will
Okay.
be no fee to not-for-profits.
Okay, so it won't be prohibitive.
No.
That was one of
We
my
don't put it in
questions.
the actual law only because then you have to go and have public hearings to change things. It's easier to have a separate fee schedule like we have in the town.
Okay.
And the farmers market, I'm not going to, it's around $40 a month maybe or something like that. And it's open like 9 months a year.
Well, we're a
maybe.
year-round market.
Well, then, but
We're
you,
exceptional.
again, if it's a not-for-profit.
Okay.
There's no
Okay.
fee.
All right.
And most of the farmers markets will not be year-round
Year-round,
because
no.
they're outdoors, the
Right.
ones that were proposed, other than UCPs, which is indoor, and is it outdoor too?
We're outdoor,
But
weather
in the
permitting.
wintertime,
we're-
you're indoor, but none others at this point in time are interested in indoors.
One of the
They're
reasons we
interested in-
started it was
3
so
to
you
6
can get
months.
stuff all year long. Thank you.
Okay.
And the other thing, I don't know if it would be appropriate or if signage is going to stay under signage, but the farmers markets are kind of a unique situation, and obviously they want signage. I know that we've tried to adhere to the town signage rules, and I don't know, what's the proper course for us to try and work out a longer-term signage situation for the farmers market? Because, like the Brewster Village Market that I was involved with for 20 years, we had signage up year-round. At the site, granted, it was not interfering with anything out in the community, but people driving by and filing for future reference is an important part of building the destination. So
Well-
should that go in with the farmers market ordinance, or should it come back separately for
No,
signage?
it would come back to the sign ordinance. It's something that Will, myself, and the town board is going to have to work on. It's not working well at the present time, so we will probably have to redraft something at that point in time. I
All right.
know, especially this time of year, things in the right-of-ways get, quite out of hand. Things on personal, private property work a lot better. So again, right now, if it's on private property, stays 15 feet off the road, it's pretty open. It's not
Okay.
seasonal so much, but if you stay on private property.
Is our public building, is our building private property? I mean, it's
Your
our
building is private property, but if you're up by the water, right by the entrance, going
Okay.
in,
Yep.
going up that way?
Yep.
If you're on this side of the guardrail, you're
Yep,
kind of
we
like
can
in
do
state
that.
right away,
Yep, yep.
and we look for it to be outside the state right away.
Okay, I will
And
make
just
sure that
check
we
with
do
the
all
building
that.
department as well, but we're gonna
Okay.
be readdressing those rules.
I really appreciate your attention to this in the middle of a public hearing for everything. Thank you.
Okay? Anyone else wish to make comment on that? Seeing none, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is a work session to discuss the revised Chapter 60 article, dogs. Bob?
Okay, well, you asked me at the last meeting, there were some people that started a petition about a particular dog situation in town. Some people here spoke about it. I invited the ASPCA to come and speak about it because they've been familiar with the situation and dealt with it. So I don't know, Chief Ross, if you'd like to get up and just speak generically about the situation at hand and what your thoughts were about the dogs and if they were abused or neglected or... I'd appreciate it.
Good evening. We've been to the location for the past couple of years.
Sorry, can you turn the mic up a little bit? Apologize. Thanks.
We've been to the location over the past few years. Is he within the boundaries? Most of the time. Most of the time when we ask him to do something, he complies. Just like recently, the dog control officer asked him to get the dogs with the vaccinations. We knew he complied to that because Pet Craze called us that he had shown up with the dogs, and we knew why he was there. So he does comply. Anytime we've asked him to take the dogs inside, he's taken the dogs inside. I know this has spurred on a lot of talk about changing the local laws and things like that. One of the things that I would say is that we have to understand that whatever laws that you're going to change, you're going to make stricter or going to make harsher, they're going to apply to everybody. It's not just going to be targeted toward this one individual. So I know at one point we were asked our opinion about when should dogs be brought in, and we said 34, 32 degrees because the water freezes. One of the problems with that is, from our experience when we worked in Westchester and even up here, people do have heated doghouses. People do have heated water bowls. So if we set down that it's 32 degrees in the dog has to come in, it doesn't matter whether the doghouse is heated or the water bowl is heated unless you put the exemption in, but then it becomes another issue because the neighbors across the street don't believe that the doghouse is heated and the water bowl is heated. So these are all things that will come up and do come up. But we know the individual, we know the house. It's not that we haven't been by. Maybe you and I wouldn't deal with the situation the same way. But I know you and I wouldn't keep these dogs. The man has a special way of dealing with them. So it's, what it comes down to is if we're going to put laws in place, we have to, keep a realistic opinion, understand they're going to apply to everybody. The SPCA would love to be a partner in the development of anything that the town wants to do when it comes to changing the laws, strengthening the laws, working with the laws. We'd be happy to give you our experience and our input, whatever you'd need, we're there for you.
And you're also going to develop a proposal for us to consider about dog control for 2018?
We provided over in Putnam Valley right now. They came to us with a problem where in the Roaring Brook section they had dogs chasing people that were walking through or jogging through, and they asked us to help. And we said to them we'd be more than willing to help with the town code if they wrote us into the town code as part of the enforcement, and if we were in the area and something like this would happen. It progressed out to could we take over the dog control, which we did. And we'd be more than happy to put together a proposal based upon your needs.
Now, does the town have to have you as their dog control officer or whatever in order to have you service here in Putnam, in our town in Putnam County?
We service every town.
Which I mean, by the way, is it SPCA or ASPCA?
SPCA, you saw
I
my Twitch when you
apologize.
said that,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
And so I know when I saw Putnam Valleys, they wrote you in the code because you are their dog control officer?
Well, not myself, the SPCA.
Well,
What
when I
hap-
look, okay, SPCA.
Right. What happens is, most town code is geared for the code enforcement officer of the town to enforce it. It's not a state law, which is what we normally enforce. So in order for us to enforce town code, we have to be written in as part of the enforcement for town code. Now, I read the town code here, and it says any peace officer. So technically, we're already written into your town code that we could issue violations or whatever. But usually, it's, we bring it to the attention of the town before we do anything and say, look, if you'd like us to do it, we'd be more than happy to. There's no charge. When it comes to the animal cruelty, we have countywide jurisdiction, so we don't have to be written in for the animal cruelty part.
Are you aware of how the town treats its dog control? We have a dog control officer, we have a humane society. What would you do different than what we're currently doing?
First off, this wouldn't be to be the shelter. That wouldn't be any part of this.
Okay,
One of the, this is just not Southeast, this is all over the state. What happens is, when it comes down to, say, dog control, everybody's very concerned about how the animals are being treated and everything else, but the dog control officers are sort of put out on an island somewhere. Putnam Valley, it was the same thing. People would call at different hours. Part of the problem is, you want a human being to be on call 24 hours, 7 days a week, all the time. And we don't know when something's going to happen, if something's going to happen, but when we call, you have to be there. That becomes an issue because it's one human being. What we did in Putt Valley is we have one dog control officer who's employed by us. We pay all the taxes, we do everything when it comes to workers' comp, liability insurance, everything else. We supply a vehicle that's marked. Any training that the state offers or whatever, we make sure the person gets trained. And then we have backup for that person as well. What happens in the towns, they take one person, you're going to be dog control officer. Use your car, we'll give you mileage. And what happens is, usually the salaries are difficult for the person anyway. And
what do you mean by that?
Pardon me?
What do you mean by they're difficult?
Low.
Well, low. Low
Oh.
is a good word, because what happens is, say for example, you're paying someone in the 20s. The person's going to want to supplement their income with another job. But the other job has to be willing to let that person go when the dog is loose, because dogs don't make appointments to run away, they just do it. So what happens is, it's going to be when the person's supposed to show up at the other job or while they're working at the other job. It's going to be Christmas, it's going to be Easter, it's going to be holidays where people have things. It's going to be a bad snowstorm, and things happen. So it puts a lot of pressure on the one person that's handling the one town. Also, here, the phone calls would go to the town clerk. And then the town clerk would let the dog control know that. After 5, they go to the sheriff. Sometimes the sheriff isn't aware of they're supposed to make the phone call or how to make the phone call or whatever. The only reason I know this is because we end up in the middle all the time. We'll get the phone calls. We'll get the phone calls from the state troopers. We're looking for the dog control officer. We have a great relationship with the dog control officer. But sometimes you need a little bit more support behind the person, and I think that's what we bring to the picture.
Now, the service you provide, it's 24/7,
Yes,
365?
yes.
Okay.
Just like the animal cruelty stuff that we do.
Where do you, if you do pick up a dog, where do you place the dog?
For Putnam Valley, like, or
For-
anywhere. I
for-
guess.
Well, Putnam Valley has their own shelter,
Right.
but it would be brought to whatever shelter the town contracts with.
Okay.
Which at this time is the Humane Society.
Right.
So your proposal, would that include the individual that you currently have and just extend his or her duties? Or in theory, you would subcontract out and find another person, you know, or,
It wouldn't be a subcontractor, it would be an employee.
okay.
The way the law is written is that, and this is the agricultural markets law, the dog control officer either has to be an employee of the town or a humane society, which is what we fall under, that they can be contracted with. We would hire the person as an employee, and what it would do is give us another overlap. We already have someone that backs up
Right.
the dog control officer in Putt Valley, but this would be one other person. So it would, depending upon where the people live or what works out better, you know, and scheduling.
Yeah, that's what I was just, I mean, the same way you can have the one individual that is working for you as a full-time employee, but right, he or she is out on one or two calls, let's just say in Putnam Valley, and like you said, you can't control when the dog, or you're gonna need the services. Now we're calling simultaneously, so that's why I just wanted to figure
No,
out, you
we'd
know.
have more than one person on
Okay.
call at a time.
Right, okay.
That's a definite,
Right,
yeah.
okay.
Anyone from the public wish to speak?
Do you want me to speak from the Humane Society? I mean,
I mean,
I'd
it's,
like to speak. I mean, Courtney Pagano is the dog control officer, which you get along with, I can.
How you doing?
well, come up to
Could-
the
you
mic.
could- Yeah, speak to the mic.
Really?
Well,
Yeah, come on. And just give your name.
I'm Michelle DeGan, I'm the president of the Putnam Humane Society. He brought up a point about if you have a second job, you can't do the job.
Actually, it's your first job.
If
The
it,
dog control will be second for anyone that we've ever hired.
right, but Courtney presently is a dog control officer. I'm just a little confused because the service Ken provides that we need desperately in the county, does a great job, but dog control is really separate, and it always has been. I know there was an issue with this gentleman with his dogs, but I also know that Courtney goes out of her way to try to educate the public about what is needed. Licensing, he didn't have the money when she first approached him. He did get his license eventually. He went, as you know, to Pet Craze and got the rabies vaccinations.
Well, I don't think he actually got it at Pet Craze, right? Wasn't he turned away from there? Did he? go
One of
to-
them got loose, the dogs, yeah, but I don't know exactly where he ended
I
up
don't know,
getting
no.
vaccines. But he got
Well,
it.
let's not make it
Right,
about
it's
one
not.
particular.
But anyway, it's an example.
Make
I
it
just want you to
generic.
know it is her job. And when, it's funny, when she was working for the Humane Society, she was there for 15 years full-time. When she got the job here, it was agreed that we would let her go when any calls came out. So she was always let go when she was at work, to go out and take the calls. Now she's on a as-needed basis, so I think it's her main job. But my point is, why can't they work hand in hand together? She's already employed by the town and doing a good job. I understand, Ken, what you do, I just don't know why we're adding it. I just don't, it just seems to me like it,
Just so you know, what happened was after this incident
Mm-hmm.
with the dogs, some people reached out to me privately. Tony asked me to look into it.
right,
We are in the budget season now.
Right.
So I'm trying to see what we can do to maybe save money for the town or to make the dog control more, better or user-friendly, or, there are issues, like Ken said, where one person is on call 24/7, 365, that's an issue, because obviously
No, I
everyone
know,
has
but I thought
lives.
Putnam Valley
And there
only-
is no
yeah.
backup in Southeast. And
well, we get a
I think
lot of
there-
the,
Isn't there?
we get the calls, well, actually, we get the calls at the shelter if they can't get a hold of her, and we've had people bring dogs in if she's out on another call. So we do some dog control too, without added costs to the town. So I just don't know why they can't communicate and work together, that's all.
Well, everyone should communicate
Mm-hmm.
and work together, but when I was looking into this, I found out that they were working with Putnam Valley, and
Right.
this seems to be working very well there. So if we can get, I'm just trying to do the right thing. And
But I
look-
mean,
look
can
for
we
the
help make
taxpayer.
it better instead of taking something away from somebody who's worked pretty
Well,
hard
I'm
for
not
several
looking to take
years?
anything
So
away, but if we could,
Yeah.
within the budget cap and trying to stay, you
But
know,
it would save money
feasible.
going
Well, I
with
don't,
someone
he's
else?
going to present a proposal. We're still waiting for your contract for 2018. We didn't get it yet.
Well, I'd like
It's the same
to-
as last year.
Well,
It'll be
how
the
do you know?
same
We didn't get it
dollar-wise.
yet.
No, but it
But
will
it
come
is,
into
we're not
effect.
increasing
Okay.
anything,
Okay.
right?
Just-
If you needed to negotiate, though, I mean, if you're talking budget time and you think that you're going elsewhere, I'd appreciate a call to see if we need to negotiate with you so we don't lose it for the
Well,
Humane Society.
well, they don't do the storage of, I mean, we're talking.
No,
apples
I know
and
that, but I'm
oranges here.
talking separately from them. If you're thinking along those lines.
Well, I mean,
to-
other
yeah.
towns have done that. I mean, I think
Right.
it's, the state controller's office does recommend that periodically towns go out to RFPs and for professional services, and
Right.
you're a professional service, and I just want to see if we're doing the best thing we can. Like, this all started because of that dog and the situation. I was a little disappointed. It took me 2 minutes to find out the dogs weren't licensed. You know, I didn't realize this was going on. They didn't have the rabies shots. If the dog bit somebody, that would be a problem. You know, thankfully, it was taken care of now.
Do you know, people sometimes don't realize they have to license their dogs. They go to the vet, they get a tag for the rabies, so it's also education. There's
Right.
probably people, maybe here.
Right, and
you
then
know?
I would assume when the dogs did get their rabies shots, they were brought in, that the vet or whoever did it looked at the dogs and didn't feel that they were abused and neglected, and, because there
Right.
was all sorts of maybe hysteria over some people saying how the town was corrupt because we let this go on, and there was Facebook posts and stuff which were just completely over the top. and
Well,
that's
this
what got
man's
me
owned dogs
upset.
for a long time. Alan Jacknick used to,
No, not him, the person who owned the dog. People were accusing him of being horrible in the town, allowing this to go on forever, and so that's when I started looking
Okay.
into it. So we just have to try to do the best thing for the town. They're gonna give us a proposal, you know, it's up to the majority of the board to consider it, you know, and then we'll see from there.
well, if you have questions, just know that we're involved with it and we help out in dog control. It's not just one person. And if she needed any backup, Tracy, one of our board members, has been there, I mean, and would help if she needed it. So, and she also has 2 other dog control officers.
But now what would happen if Tracy got hurt, because she's not an employee of the town, and there's no
She's one of our board of directors, and we have an insurance policy through the shelter. I mean, we have to have, there's
But would
insurance.
that be covered being off-site or whatever? That's, you know, I don't know, that's.
Well, there's volunteer policy, yep. I mean, I can look into that, but
Right.
yeah, that wouldn't be anything to do with you. It wouldn't affect you at all. It's
Well,
not an
if-
employee of yours.
No, but if she was stepping in for Courtney
Right.
to, got
But
hit
through
by
the
a
shelter.
car,
It would be through the shelter she's stepping in for Courtney, not through the
I
town.
don't know. I mean, I'll defer to legal counsel to see what he thinks about that, but,
Yeah.
you know, I just want to see if we can.
No, I do, I understand that. Just, I'd ask if you're putting an RFP out for Humane Society services, let us
Oh, yeah,
come
well,
and
of course.
speak to you,
I mean,
because we're also very community involved with so many things.
Well,
It's
this
not
isn't-
just a
this
housing
is
for the
dog
dogs.
control we're talking about,
No, I know
not-
that, but you
right.
said it's recommended to go out for an RFP, so if that's on
Right,
your
for all
mind, because it's
professional
budget
services.
time,
Yeah.
please let us speak to you, because it's a little bit more than just bringing in your dogs and dropping them off. It's everything else that's done, all right? Okay? That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else to the subject matter? Yes, ma'am?
Hi, I'd just like to say
Just your name, I
that.
know who it is, but identify yourself.
My name is Renee Diaz. I live on Meadow Lane. I just like to say that I'm here to support our current dog control officer, Courtney. I've known her through the shelter for a very long time as a 20-year volunteer there. I know that she works very well with animals. This is not to take anything away from our SPCA officers who do a fantastic job as well. But, you know, I do think that she does her best. She does know animals. And I don't think that we should perhaps judge people on behalf of one incident. That's all. So I support her, and I hope you will take that into consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh.
Lisa Tremblay. I spoke at the last meeting. I don't know if this is relevant right now because this seems to be a little, not a battle, but concern over the dog officer. And the point I made last time we met by giving you Putnam Valley's code was my goal and the people that are concerned is to change the code so that we can do better enforcement, because the way it's written right now leaves the dogs very vulnerable. And I'm sure the Putnam Humane Society would agree with me. Okay? You're right. So I think that that is what the bigger goal is here, is to get it in the code that more protection is needed. Better laws, whether it be tether laws, which I know Ken opposes a little bit, but we can talk about that. And we talked last time about Maria Logano, the veterinarian, and having Ken be on a committee, maybe with one of you. We could get a bunch of volunteers to help, write this code. Okay?
Well, that person will be Mr. Cohen when you're ready.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Well, I know, Tony, you had asked to do some research on that, correct? To have
On what?
Bob do some research
Yeah,
on.
Bob's going to come back with some kind of proposal. I think that's why Ken's here tonight, and the people involved with whatever that decision made is here tonight. And as it moves forward, once we have it, we post it, and everyone has an opportunity to read it and make comment accordingly.
Okay. And I did look into New York State law, and it appeared, and Willis will check this for me, but it looks like we can increase the penalties. It's not tons of money, but it appears that we can alter that, so.
Well, I'd rather people adhere to the law than fine them. Because,
No, I would
mean,
too, but if
Yeah,
it can be
of
a
course.
Adherence to the
little
law
more.
is more important than money.
Right,
Right.
but if it would be a slight deterrent or help pay for the dog control officer, then I think that's something we should really look into.
I mean, it does, I don't own a dog, but I know a lot of people have dogs, and they had no idea dogs had to be licensed. I mean, it's only $8 or something to license the dog. I mean, I think that's part of the problem, is if everyone could get their dog licensed. And the license is just basically to ensure that the dogs have its rabies shots, which is a public health concern.
And
I
this
don't know how we can go about doing that. I mean,
enforcing licensing.
do we send letters out, Michelle, if people let their dogs expire their licenses, or?
We send renewals out every month, but also when Courtney does pick up a dog and goes to the Humane Society, we have an agreement, and they don't let that dog go
Right,
unless they
unless it's-
license the dog, yeah. So,
What if
A lot
dog-
more people would have been here tonight, but they thought it was tomorrow night, so, just so you know.
Tony, when you say adherence to the law, I'm
Well, any kind of a law. I mean, you want people to adhere to the laws instead of fining them. In other
I
words-
think that's true of every law in
Yeah,
the world,
it
but
is.
enforcement is probably the only way that you're going to really,
Oh, I didn't say not
I mean,
to
most
enforce.
people are law abiding, there's no doubt about it. Otherwise, we'd have anarchy, but I think part of it is what are we going to do with, what are we going to do with the fact that the enforcement, it looks like what we want is to possibly change our code. I think that's the sense I'm getting right now. And the issue also is in changing the code, we can only change the code in certain ways that, and Bob, if you're gonna be looking into that, that's great. But it sounds like if we change the law, how do we enforce it? Will it be a law that indeed, if you don't adhere to it, how do you enforce it? So. It'd be great if everyone adheres to every law in the world.
Right.
Then you might be wearing a different suit,
Thank you.
so.
Just one more comment. When we said that we'd be more than willing to help out and submit a proposal, that doesn't preclude us from offering the position to Courtney. What it does is it brings support that would be needed for any dog control officer. Part of the way the laws are written is that if it's an employee of the SPCA and they become a dog control officer with us, then whether it be Courtney, whether it be Mary Jones or someone else that's in the position, and a backup comes in, they're an agent of ours. So it's our insurance, our liability, our workers' comp that is primary because we're the agent that you hired to do this. So that's number one. Number two, when it comes to the the laws of the town code, generally what has happened over the years is the towns have taken the agriculture markets laws, brought them into the town code, almost as written. But when they do that, they bring it in as a violation, which will generate the money. one of the things that we offer is that we can enforce the agriculture and markets laws in the criminal sense as well. So the dog control officer can do the fines or whatever, if it's a dog at large or whatever. We can go out and we can seize the dog and pick it up and do anything else along those lines, because we are empowered under the agriculture and markets law to do that. So it's just one more aspect that we bring to the town. But again, it doesn't mean that if we submit a proposal that we want to get rid of Courtney. What we see throughout the county and everywhere that we go is usually they're an island and they're unto themselves. By having backup and the ability to have coverage and change shifts with somebody, or have a vehicle that's provided by the SPCA and everything else, it just makes it that much easier for them to do their job. And again, the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week thing is very difficult for one single person to do. I just wanted to touch on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
There's so much I'd like to talk about, but it's not the time. If we could get on your agenda, maybe?
Sure.
And
Well, this is gonna move forward possibly when the proposal comes forward. We'll have the same night.
because it's just like the licensing thing, when we adopted.
Wait, Michelle, would you mind just, everyone in the world wants to hear from you. Sure.
When we adopt every animal out, it gets a license too. Just want you to know that. So all your, and I understand what Ken's saying about what he does, but I don't know why they're meshing. I don't get it. I don't know why you can't support what they're doing, what she's doing now. Back up.
One
I
quick
guess I'm
question. Let me
confused.
ask you a quick question of either of you, I was pointing here. What about cats?
We take in a ton of cats for the
But does
town.
the SPCA, do you deal
No.
with cats too, or just dogs?
But you don't have a facility. He doesn't have a facility to take them except
Okay,
for
but-
Putnam Valley.
So
for
if
his
they find
dogs.
someone that's abusing cats, they'll pick them up.
Well, he had cats taken down to Northwind Kennels. That's a whole separate issue.
Ken, just give you,
Yeah, you can stay up here for a second, just so you don't have to go back.
we're almost done, Ken.
There was a situation, we just took in 14 cats from a house. Ken got calls on as well. The gentleman had dementia, his sons moved him out. They left the cats in the house. We ended up, Cricket and Chuck, the dog control officers for the town of Carmel, were hired by the family. They went in and trapped them, and we took them all in. So I know that you had a situation through Kent, the same thing, right? Where they were taken down to Westchester?
Well,
Cats?
I think we're talking about apples and oranges.
Well, he's just
Well, I'm
asking.
just
No, cats and
asking,
No,
dogs.
no, I understand, but you originally were talking about the dogs.
well, I know, but I'm trying to,
Under the town code with the dogs.
okay.
That would be the contract shelter for the town, where they would go. When it comes to animals seized pursuant to an arrest, Agriculture and Markets takes the responsibility and puts it on the sheriff to house them. And that becomes a county issue, which we've already sat down numerous times with the county exec and, explained to them the responsibility. If it's a seizure of animal subject to cruelty, it moves to the county.
Okay.
When it comes to cats, part of the problem is the position that you have is dog control officer. And usually what happens is the towns will target dog control officer because by law you have to have one. Other towns, if they have the funding or whatever, they'll expand it to animal control. But most towns, in order to be in compliance, will make it just dog control. So when it comes to this, it would just simply be dog control, and if you look into the town code, it's mostly directed, if not all, to dogs and
Okay.
issues that they bring up.
Thank you.
But with us, the animal cruelty
It's-
is any living creature other than a human.
Okay.
That's how an animal is described that we do.
Good. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, this will be on a future agenda. Michelle, when you, we'll notify you when it's going to come up again, and if you want to make whatever the presentation you want to make, you can do it at that time. Would you mind?
Well, at that time, if you're looking for a presentation for...
Well, I don't know. You said you wanted to come back.
Well, I'd like to just be involved in this, because I just don't, we're so involved with the dog control. We get calls, oh God. We get calls on a daily basis, and we'll help solve problems, or have someone bring a dog, and we had a dog Courtney brought in Tiki, a dog that a woman who lets it roam up and down the street. Ken's aware of this dog. Courtney, every time she'd go out, he was back in its yard. It's one of those where she lets it roam. Courtney picked it up. We sent it to the vet, had it shaved, had blood work taken. I mean, there's so much that we do. We're trying, and we're going to keep the dog. The woman was keeping the dog outside because the dog barks. It wasn't healthy. We're working with her. We're doing what that dog needed. I mean, Courtney used to go to the woman's house and help brush the dog. The dog would get so matted. She's very involved with the people in the town with the animals. I think you need to, I don't think everyone understands, the depth of what she does, and just meshing what Ken does and dog control together. I have a problem just understanding it. I know what he does, we need so badly, and he works hard, and he's overwhelmed with his abuse and neglect calls, so I just
Well, we're
don't
just
understand why
trying
they
to-
can't work together.
We're just
That's
trying
all.
to look for the more
I know.
efficient, cost economical way to take care of the dog situation and dog problems in the town. And, if it works in Putnam Valley, apparently, not, if he's gonna hire another employee, maybe we'll work here. We just have to see. What towns do you contract with?
We're contracted with you, we're contracted with Phillipstown, and with Patterson. We have a secondary. Carmel yep.
So Putnam Valley has their own
We actually
shelter.
went to see if we could get the dog control contract with Putnam Valley, and there were 2 board members that voted for us and 3 against. But they needed a place. I think they were more concerned about, we don't take in seized court-ordered animals, and they wanted somebody who could do that. So I don't know where they go, but Ken is able to do that. We don't seize animals. He has police powers to go, but that's the SPCA. That's what his organization does. Ken's busy on weekends, but I asked that maybe sometime he come to the shelter and set up a table with literature to explain what he does, and we would be out there and explain what we do, because they get us confused. Sometimes we get his mail and we've had to forward it. People don't understand there's 2 different organizations that provide 2 important services, so.
Okay,
But they needed that part of it, so that's why it went that way.
okay.
All right?
This is to be continued whenever. Whenever you're ready, we'll let you know. Okay. Thank you. Okay, next item on the work session is Bear Hill recreation fees.
Good evening. So at this point...
Just state your name again for the record.
Sorry, Terry Hahn,
Good.
Principal LED APC Land Planner for the project. At this point, we are looking, the public hearing has been closed for the special permit. I believe there was as part of the public hearing, you have 2 letters from AKRF looking at a range of recreation fees. The applicant has put together a 3rd proposal that we've submitted to the board, and you should have copies of it. If you don't have copies, please let me know. And we would recommend going forward with that proposal, obviously, as part of your conditions for the special permit. So we're looking to finish up the special permit application and answer whatever questions you might have.
Does anyone? Okay, I have it here, okay. Just so you know, there was an original proposal around 2 and change, and LADA and the applicant has made a revision. They'd like to make a cash payment per unit per AKRF memo dated 2017, August of 2017, which.
Is that 200,000 and change?
Yeah, that's what,
Yep.
I was trying to get the exact number. Was it 263, 796, 76? Is that the number?
Yes, that's it. Yep.
Okay, so that would remain intact.
Yep.
Donation replacement up to installed value of $100,000 is determined by the town engineer of the Castle Park play structure, which was identified during the meeting as a town-owned facility needing replacement. This portion would include coordination with the Recreation Department to place the structure, identification or additional entry plantings and landscape improvements, and installation by project sponsor. Work to be completed by project sponsor within 6 months of project approval. Now, That's up to 100,000. Now, we had done a study on Castle Park, and we've applied for grants, haven't been unsuccessful to date. And the least expensive proposal we came up with was like 156,000. So we're short 56,000 of what the original plan was for whatever. Now, I didn't have a chance to send this to you because I was waiting all day from Patty Borman to provide me with the exact numbers, because we had done this back in, God, it was almost a year ago. So the numbers were kind of stale. And then the updated one, this one says it's 130,000. Now it's like 156. And it identifies like 3 types of things that they would put there. One's a Kids' Choice Fitness Cluster, Kids' Choice Mega Tower Deck, and Tots Choice Expansion 3-deck system. So what we have planned up there, again, where the money comes from, how it goes, this is, again, something we looked for a grant, didn't happen. So, and then the third item you had to offer on that was a donation of land owned by Long Ridge Associates of 46.28 acres of land adjacent and contiguous to Tenita Lake Park, known as tax map 56.-1-41. See attached map. Transfer would occur after formal acceptance of the donation by the town board. The total value of the proposal exceeds the upper range of the recreation fees identified in the AKRF October 18, 2017 memo, and results in significant improvements and benefits to the town. If this is acceptable to the board, the project sponsor would prepare a formal memorandum of understanding as part of the project special permit conditions. Please let us know if you have any questions.
I would just remark in terms of the numbers that you got, a lot of times we see significant savings by having private interest install, for example, the park or the equipment versus the price that you might have gotten as a municipality. So we are able to see a fairly significant savings that results in something that the town would not have otherwise been able to price out for a similar kind of number. So I would just throw that out for you, because we have seen that time and time again. Here.
If I may, I read the proposal that was issued by that manufacturer to the town for the park at Lake Teneta. We're prepared, if the town board sees fit, to contract directly, provide the insurance certificates, complete the entire work at our financial responsibility, and do the landscaping that Terry has proposed beyond the original work as part of what's in this letter. And if it costs us more than that 100,000, that's our responsibility, not the town's.
Well, I think that would be, I'd be happy with that compromise. If it was put in writing, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think it's a little more fair than the original one, and I think it's a good compromise. I think.
What's a good compromise, having the park?
No,
Having this park?
with the new
46
recommendation that's been
acres.
put forward. I just wanted to explain to them that it was gonna cost us more than the probably 100,000. And I'm hearing now that they'll take responsibility and provide the park with what we have and do most of the work, I guess, yourself.
We would solicit other proposals for the same equipment as we saw in that proposal, in concert with the town board, with the Recreation Commission, and the town engineer, and complete the work. We recently did, I didn't mention it at the last meeting, Fieldstone Pond came to us and asked if they could have help just a few years ago with a full playground. They had a similar situation where they were quoted very significant dollars. It still was significant. We voluntarily, with no other involvement with Fieldstone Pond, bought it, installed it, and just did it as saying thank you and being good neighbors. Okay. It cost us a lot less to do it. It still was a substantial sum of money.
So what we're saying is number 2 on the October 27, 2017 letter that Tony read, the donation replacement. What you're saying is the proposal, I believe it's the Miracle proposal dated August 10th, 2016. I think that's what you're referring to, Tony?
Yes.
That was 130,722.27.
And that was at the
So-
time, so there's an updated figure now of around 156,000.
So in 1 year, it went up 26,000?
Well, one thing, the original proposal did not, they called us yesterday and asked about prevailing wage, and I said, yes, it would have to be prevailing wage because of the town. And the cost of the equipment itself went up about 15,000. So it was 15,000 for cost of equipment, and it went from installation, which prevailing wage was 30,000, went to 41,000. I mean, we're close to the same ballpark. I mean, again, we did this going out to seek a grant and had not received one as yet, and the proposal said up to 100,000. I just wanted to let you know there was more than. And you're making, I think, a counter slightly to this.
I appreciate that. We had the same experience with Tom Fenton on Volunteer Park, Zimmer Road, where we privately contracted in advance for all the work that was on the approved drawings. We did it open shop, we did it with people within the community, and it worked just fine. And we had the cooperation of the town engineer, the town planner, the Recreation Commission. They did weekly inspections as well.
I would also note that the proposal that you have from Miracle, there are two competing companies that provide very similar facilities. One goes through Miracle, the other one goes through Landscape Structures or one of the others. And we are in a much better position to get them to negotiate with one, to play off against one another in order to get you, what you want is a 3-tiered, multi-year facility to provide play equipment for all the different levels that are available. And so that's what you would get in this, but we can probably get a much better number than you can.
Well, good. Now, one of the things, this was not a guarantee to them. We had to have some kind of a number to put together in order to apply for a grant. And actually, once we got the grant, then we would go out to bid and find out whatever. So based on what was said this evening, just a rewording of it, I like the compromise.
Well, just if we can really understand what the compromise is then.
Well, it's the letter that we have on file.
I have the letter, number 2, but what is the compromise on number 2? Number 2 would be, the compromise specifically would be that the developer will provide what's in number 2, this system, which is going to be either the system that this Miracle system, or the other one, the landscaping system, that it would be similar in quality and grade. And indeed, if it did go over, you believe you might be able to negotiate better as a private. And if it went over a certain
It's
amount.
our responsibility.
Pardon me?
It's our responsibility.
So it's not limited to the 100,000 that you noted?
No, it's not.
Got it.
There's one more part of that.
Okay.
And this was done in concert with our partners. The installation, complete installation, and the landscaping is to be done within 6 months of approval. It is not incumbent on building permits or how many homes you've built or occupied or leased. It's a commitment that we would do it. If this was going now, it would be done this spring, summer, with no other conditions or strings to it.
Now, the town, we haven't discussed it as a board, but we've received, numerous complaints about the condition of the park, and basically, once we got, this is now, looks like it could happen. I'm waiting for a grant, it's never gonna happen. But if and when we got that, which looks like it may happen, Castle Park will be demolished, removed, take a picture recognize people for what they did back then, and recognize the new park, so to speak.
Right, because when Castle Park was originally installed, it's a Ron Leathers design. I remember going to fundraisers for that back at the beginning. So it's do whatever you need to do. We can certainly coordinate how that would work out and ultimately end up with a new place for it.
Okay.
I have some concerns.
Go ahead.
And thank you, because I think this is a much better compromise. But I do want to voice some concerns. Do we know, I would like to know, and I didn't look it up, Tony, what the assessment on the Tenetta Lake Park?
$102,000.
Okay, thank you.
And approximately $4,000 a year in taxes.
Okay.
Say that again?
Town taxes.
What was the amount? I
The
didn't hear.
assessment was 102,000, I think 102,200.
Right.
And,
The town
yeah,
portion.
it's actually $102,200. And the taxes, school last paid was $3,033.83, and town was $686.98. I don't know why it doesn't say, I don't know if that town means town and county or whatever, but it's around $4,000 a year in taxes.
Okay. My concern, my only concern with this, because as I said, the playground part seems good. My only concern is this is piecemeal, which is fine, but I am concerned when the other piece of land that's owned over in Terravest, the 60 units of, which was senior housing,
That's
but
correct.
now falls into workforce, correct? I mean, it could. It's the only other.
The zone has not been changed and no application has been put forward.
Right, but that is my concern looking ahead. That's the only other piece in town.
Regarding the recreation fee?
Correct. Yes, correct.
I'm thrilled. I shouldn't be facetious. I'm
No, you can
thrilled,
be.
I'm thrilled you brought it up. Volunteer Park, that property that was zoned commercial and was very usable, was donated upon that approval before one house was constructed. If you look through the town records from Jacobson Associates, I think you'll find, and AKRF, that the cost of building that park was in excess of $1 million. We contracted privately and built it in lieu of rec fee, plus the donation, and you still don't have one home there. We did it, we gave our word, and we did it.
I appreciate that, but there were no rec fees, I don't believe, on the senior housing portion.
I beg your pardon, I think if you look through the records, we said in lieu of a rec fee, and in knowing what it would be, if it was judged a single-family home, we did that. I think you'll find that what we did is 3-4 times the value to this community of what it would have been had it been at the full rec fee. And I'm not saying it would have been.
Right. We
We
don't,
did that before one home was built. Scarpina Park was donated, 50 acres, without any permit, any approval, any request of this town. Fieldstone Pond was just done as a good neighbor. It had no other application or financial involvement with them.
so it would be your position that the fees have been paid on that, on the 60 units of senior housing?
Absolutely.
Okay, I would respectfully disagree, but I think I've made my point and you've made yours, so thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
I
that's-
suggest you look
That
at
is
the
not a part
record.
of this application.
It's just a
It's not-
concern,
yeah.
it's a future concern of mine,
Yeah,
that's all.
okay. But
Okay.
the part, it's not a part of this particular
No.
application. That's to be addressed in the future possibly.
Right.
Good. Okay,
Definitely would support this, so thank you. The only thing that I would ask, easier said than done probably, is just if you can think about whatever you do there, maybe to be a little inclusive for children with disabilities. I just kind of remember my son being in school, and they get a new playground, and then you look to the left, or look to the right, and you see somebody with disabilities, and they can't enjoy and play, so, if there's a way that you could include that, even if it's a small piece, I think that would be great.
I think you find that the current,
Can you turn the mic a little bit, please?
I'm sorry, I think you'll find that the current manufactured play structures from all of the companies have really changed how they approach the play structure. So even the basic fundamental models deal with wheelchair accessibility and different step sizes and things like that. So it's a very, very different model than it was even when Castle Park was originally designed. So it's
Thank you.
they've worked very, very intensely to try and change the nature of inclusive play.
Great, thank you.
any, okay.
We agree and respect your comment and your wishes. Council, Richard O'Rourke, and myself both served on the Brewster Educational Foundation. That was brought to light exactly what you said about the lack of inclusiveness. Funds were raised at a time to do what you have at the Brewster Central Schools. It came to light with the son of a lady in our community, Pat Peoples, her son Eric, who was confined to a wheelchair, who had to watch everyone else. The funds were raised privately to do all the improvements, to do the upgrades to the gymnasium, not through the school district funds.
Thank you.
Okay, Will, where does this go next? Did they just redraft a new proposal? Where do we go next for this? This is the final,
We're in the process of finalizing the community benefits agreement, which
Okay.
is, this will all be part of. And that's really, I think Ashley is the point on that. So now that we've worked out this aspect of it, hopefully we can pull together a document that'll be acceptable to the board.
okay.
Well, okay. Are we saying that this is acceptable to the board? The project sponsor would prepare a formal memorandum of understanding as part of the project's special permit conditions. So when would that be?
Well, no, hold on. What you have is the 3 different pieces.
Correct.
As to when they're done. A condition of the special permit would be the preparation of a memorandum of understanding.
Gotcha. Okay.
We're trying to set up the conditions of the special permit is really what we're trying to do.
Very good.
Because that's where we're at the moment, so that you can vote on the special permit.
And
So
just
whether
for-
it's attached as a condition or it's within the community benefits agreement, it accomplishes the same goal.
And just for the public, can you identify the purpose of the special permit?
I'm sorry, what
Identif-
we're doing is, we are in front of the town board, in order for the town board to vote on a special permit, which is required in the multifamily workforce housing zone in order to, allow the use to occur, in accordance with the regulations. That's what the special permit is for. It's specifically for that use. It's a mandatory requirement.
Okay. For the zoning text
zone.
change that was,
Pretty much all
Proposed.
uses are special permit
Yes.
uses.
okay, thank you.
I would offer one more, if the board sees fit, to have Mr. Stevens as your counsel and Mr. Rourke representing the applicant to draft and review and then submit to your board for review a formalized memorandum of agreement regarding the rec fees and the other conditions that we just spoke about.
I'd certainly like to see something.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it done. We're prepared to stand by what we've put in writing and what we've said verbally tonight.
Okay, do it.
Thank you.
We would just ask that we be placed on the next available agenda to do the special permit and the
Well, the
conditions.
next one
so
is
that we-
next week, which is
Next
a
week.
public
That's just the
hearing.
budget.
Huh?
That's just for the budget, though.
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
It's a meeting. I wouldn't be,
Oh, okay, no, I figured-
November 16th, is that the one after that?
Thursday.
I want to say 17th, but I don't have it.
It's either, whatever
Thursday.
Thursday, November 16th or 17th.
All right. So at that point, you would want a draft resolution?
November 16th,
Is
yeah.
that something that,
Well, whatever.
yeah, I mean,
Mr.
that's,
Leopard suggested the 2 councils
Okay.
get together, and our next meeting is next week, and we're not gonna be ready for that one. So what's it?
November 16th is the
November
meeting.
16th, can you be prepared by then?
sure, I think we can, yeah.
Okay, make it November 16th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the work session is the 2018 town budget. Okay, we've had a lot of conversation on the town budget. We had a tax cap override suggested by myself. Unfortunately, on the way to the bank, I got picked off. I guess the way we were doing the accounting prior to and ever since we've been doing here in the town of Southeast, that it would exceed the tax cap, and council is going to now give us a brief description of why it will not affect the tax cap. Would you be prepared to do that? Because I sure the heck can't.
What came to light when the budget negotiations began was that there was a significant increase in the amount of money that had to be spent to maintain the garbage district, the refuse district. And when I sat down with the town accountant, I was questioning why this district is treated differently than other districts, like water districts, sewer districts, lighting districts. And the answer was that when our town accountant came on the job, this particular district had always been listed in our books as a special assessment district, which didn't really make a lot of sense because the way the garbage district was created back in 1996 was that it was to establish a user fee for the service of obtaining garbage collection. We were set with a set of circumstances back in the 90s where all the residents obtained garbage collection independently, and there were private carters that would deal independently with each resident to collect and get rid of their trash. And our residents in this town were paying a lot of money. So it was the town board at the time said, well, maybe through economies of scale, if we were to create a district and have a public bidding process where one carter would provide the service, we could save a lot of money. Well, they were right, because after a lot of hemming and hawing, the carters required that by petition that the matter be put to public referendum, which passed overwhelmingly, and ultimately they sued us in the Supreme Court, and we won to say that we established this district properly. But it was always intended from the moment we did the map plan and report that it was going to be a user fee based upon residential, each residential unit would pay a user fee. How that got translated into a special assessment district, I don't know. And so after this was identified to me in my conversations with the town accountant, I contacted the controller's office legal and said, we have a problem here because we went to contract last year, went to the public bid, and we accepted the lowest responsible bid, which increased the amount that we're going to be paying for garbage collection services by about $400,000, which would, if we have to include this in our tax cap, would blow it out the ceiling. And, he said, the counsel that I was speaking with said, well, why is it that you think this is different than any other tax? I said, well, because it's not a tax, it's a user fee. And I explained to him how we set it up. He said, well, if it's a user fee, then this is not supposed to be held as part of your tax cap. So after that, I advised the town accountant, and I advised the supervisor and the town board that apparently that calculation really is not included in the tax cap calculation, and therefore you should go back to the drawing board and redo the budget or adopt a preliminary budget that doesn't necessarily, when I say adopt, file a preliminary budget that doesn't necessarily include the revenues on the garbage district side, which I believe they've done, and they were able to rework the numbers so that the amount raised by taxes in the reality of what a tax is, they are able to come back with a proposal that does not break the tax cap. And a number of the factors that went into play when I was trying to figure out whether this was truly an assessment district was that we don't have an assessment role for the garbage district. We don't. That's not the way it works. It's just residential. It's based on residential units in the town. The cost of running that district, which is really the contract for garbage pickup, is essentially whacked up amongst all the units. So if you own a property that has 2 residential units, you pay 2 units. If you have a property that has 1 residential unit, you pay 1 unit. So it's not based upon an ad valorem assessment, meaning that if your property is worth more than somebody else's, you'd pay a higher tax than somebody else, or you'd pay a higher fee. So in the final analysis, I think that it's certainly, again, it's, you know, the attorney for the controller's office said, well, you know, you're the town attorney, it's your opinion. So I have rendered my opinion, and as a result of that, the board has gone back to the drawing board. I don't know if that answers questions or or creates more questions, but I'd be happy to elaborate further if necessary.
I think what's important is that this board was looking to bust a cap. And I sat here and said, we don't have to bust the cap. And guess what? We don't have to bust the cap. And what's important is that there was enough questioning by this board to bring us to the point that we're at now, where more investigation was done. And look at that. We don't have to bust the cap. And that's what's good, because that's what happened. Now, we can do more, and I think we can do more. I'm willing to, right now, with this preliminary budget, because it's going to have a public hearing next week, but I think we could even do more. And the point really is that it's that kind of an inquiry, it's that kind of questioning, it's that kind of, you know, Tony, I don't know what you meant by you got picked off going to the bank or whatever you just suggested.
Well, I was given information by which I prepared my budget. If I didn't have that information, I would not have produced that budget. I would have produced a budget that we're basically considering this evening.
Okay, but the information was acquired because of questioning. So now we have, you know, I questioned it. I said, why are we doing this? And guess what happened? We got it. Now we can do more. Because what I initially said is when you look at the budget, you know what you have when you look at the budget? You have lines, which we can still look at in terms of revenue and expenses, that maybe we can get it lower. But the point really is it happened. And I'm glad it happened, and I'm glad for your explanation. But it's something that we can still scrutinize. I am more than happy to continue to scrutinize this. I'm more than happy to say that what you prepared, I believe, is the preliminary budget, because Tony will confirm what's been modified from the budget that was first presented to us about 3 weeks ago. But we can do more. And I'm going to look at it. Everyone out there, I encourage you to look at it and to see what more you can do to maybe help the budget. If there isn't anything, if Tony is still, as our chief budget officer, still feeling a little uncomfortable with the fact that revenues, I mean, I think that revenues are understated and the expenses might be overstated. When I sat down with Willis, Tony, and Ron Hunt, who's our accountant, I believe it was last Thursday, it might have been, and we went over this, and this is when these great ideas gelled, you know, and I said, well, you know, Tony said, Liz, look at what happens with the revenues. So for instance, between 2011 and 2012, there was a 13.32% increase. The cap had to be overridden in 12 because of that. Well, in asking Ron Hund what happened, what caused the 2012 tax levy to increase by $975,984 over the 11 levy was due to estimated revenues for the 2012 budget being $700,000 less. The drop in revenue came from interfund revenues, $176,000, recreation fees, $170,000, fines, $50,000, mortgage tax. We have no control over mortgage tax, $108,000, building inspector fees, $82,000, and planning fees, $115K during that period of time. Additionally, you had the library in 2012, the referendum, $320,000. But since then, what has the town tax change been? 13, 1.11%, 14, 2.13%, 15, 1.94%, 16, 0.46%, 17.113%, and now we have 18. And guess what? If you added that all up, it might look like a phenomenal amount, but it's not. It's not. And what the bottom line is, we scrutinized it. I got this board to move in that direction, I believe. And now, hey, I think we can do more. But we'll look at it. But right now, I am prepared to say, fine, submit your budget, just please let us know what else you've changed. And then at that point, we'll have the public hearing, and then we can finally weigh in prior to the final budget being passed.
Okay, well, just two quick things.
Sure.
With the numbers, one of the reasons I overestimate expenses and underestimate revenues, you mentioned $900,000.
Absolutely.
That will not happen while I'm here.
That's.
The way I budget. So
And-
that's to my defense, okay?
Correct.
And as far as what we're preparing tonight, we sat down, the four of us in a room, and this is the budget we agreed on. And we're-
I just want to make sure that everyone knows what was changed.
Okay, well, basically, the biggest change is we don't have to break the tax cap because it went from this column to this column. What would have been approximately an $8 tax to each homeowner is going to be reduced to maybe $3.50, which is a good thing. But again, had I known, but again, I'm not going to say it was misinformation. It's just that I was told one thing, it ended up being something else, which I don't have a problem with. And I think we have a good budget as it stands. Can more be taken out of it? Yes, it can, but my recommendation would not be to do that. So the difference between what I had prepared and what we're having this evening is around $54,000, which we're going to be taking from the surplus that we have. I want to keep that surplus pretty much intact because there's many things coming forward in the future. And I was approached by the MTA, I think last week. They wanted to meet with me yesterday. I really didn't know what the purpose of it was. I'm not going to say why they actually came because I want them to get all the glory for what they're going to announce shortly. But one of the things I spoke to them when they were in my room is about the future of the lot up on Metro North and Southeast Station. They sounded favorably because they're going to have to come to us looking for something. So I think something may be worked out there in the future.
So that would be added revenue.
No, it's revenue that we would maintain and not be a concern that I had.
Correct.
Whatever, which
Exactly.
is a good thing, but I'd
That's a
still, again.
wonderful thing.
Again, based on my numbers were thrown around, we're about $100,000 over what the state requires as so-called minimum, and again, that's the minimum. So the basics, but the difference is $54,000, which we took from surplus to balance the budget.
And you're saying that the fund balance when you say surplus?
Well,
I think that's the accounting.
surplus and fund balance to me is one and the same.
That's fine, but I just want to make sure everyone out there
And
knows.
we still have more than the state
Right.
recommends if we take
The
that.
proper, it's the fund balance is what Tony refers to as the surplus that a lot of people call a reserve. So the bottom line is what you're saying is you're taking that money out, but we have contingencies, we have a lot of the surplus, however you want to say it, built into this budget too.
Well-
So you're taking in, so everyone just knows, because we're paying taxes on it.
Well, I did identify what is considered surpluses or contingencies. Now, what I do here in the town of Southeast is I only have one, we have numerous departments, only one department has an overtime line. Any other department except one, which is the courts, is required to come to me for overtime. I either approve it or deny it, and not knowing what that number is going to be. And this particular court runs around $20,000 in excess of what they should for overtime. I budget $30,000. They do $50,000. I don't want to raise it because I really want them to fall back in line and come in at $30,000. At one point in time, it was $100,000. So what I try to do, again, with the contingency, I explain there's different things that come up. Unexpected, we have a grant writer, there's numerous things. The monies in those contingencies, again, what I call the surplus or the additional revenue over here, I treat that like an IRA, and the government's going to come back and slap my hand if you go into it. The day-to-day activity of the town, don't have to report back to the town board saying, if we keep it in the contingency, it's in our budget. We don't know what it is, that's why it's called a contingency. So one contingency line is strictly basically for overtime and something else if it need be. And the other contingency line is around $75,000. Contingencies happen throughout the year. We identify them every month in a report here to the town board. We identify a contingency, what one contingency is, what it's spent, and the other one, what it's spent. So every month, there's a report to this town board that we provide, and that's what I don't have it in front of me. Excuse me, Ron, what's the word?
What?
The budget, every year. I can't think of the word. Transfers. Okay, the transfers. Every month, we have that report, and it identifies what monies came out of contingency. So, and there's a balance of it. So, again, as far as this budget now, it's 1.84%, which is exactly a tax cap. And again, I'm a believer that I want, yes, you have to stay below or at the tax cap, and I agree with that, and that's what we do. Now, we do receive credits for it, and Ron, you maybe want to come up for a second and just identify, because there's been, the increase is 4.14, and we're saying it's 1.84 because we're giving credit. So can you just briefly explain to us why we do that?
Tony, could I say something first?
Yes.
Please? I do want the public to know that this is a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And-
No, don't use that word.
Well, I know, but just people should understand, this is a user fee on garbage. You're getting a distinct service, but your taxes are your user fee on your tax bill is gonna go up about $69 a year. So people should just bear that in mind. It's not like anyone gets a free ride here. We have to pay it, we have to collect it because we have to pay it out. So I just think it's really important for people to know.
Yeah, well, you gotta pay for the garbage. There's any which way you look at it.
Absolutely, but that was always the case, and the problem was, and I went into Ron's office with Tony over a week ago and said, I don't understand how the garbage is part of our budget and breaks the tax cap, because not everyone in town, the Village of Brewster, commercial properties don't pay into this. They don't have their garbage collected, so it didn't make sense. So I think that this board in working, changed something, but it wasn't, the changes weren't substantial at this point at all. It's really, you're gonna be paying, instead of $8, you're gonna be paying, what, $5?
$3.50 to
So, yes, you're gonna save some money, but you're still gonna pay the $69, and I just think it's really important for people to know that.
Yeah,
And
there's
I
no
am
such thing as a
interest-
free lunch, Lynn. That's what it comes down to, right? There's no such thing as free garbage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And let me tell you also, back when they formed the district, and I think it was 1997, there's a date of 96, but 97, let's go back 20 years. What you're paying for garbage this year, which is around $3.69, it's around $60 to $69 additional this year as opposed to what it was in the past. You're paying less now than taxpayers were paying private carters going back to when this was created, by almost $50. So as bad as the number is, it would be a heck of a lot worse at this point in time if it never happened. So creating the district was fine. The first time we've had a problem with it was this year, which put it really under a super microscope in a sense, and I'm glad with the end result. So next year when I prepare my budget, I won't have to worry about it. I only have to worry about the $69,000 increase that the garbage will up, because the maximum they can go up for the next 5 years is 3% per year, which is almost $60,000 every year for the next whatever, which is $370,000. That's a lot of money. So over the next 6 years or 5 years, whatever that number is, it's going to go up another $369,000 on top of the current $400,000.
And
Ron?
I just want to say, our garbage pickup and service now is better than we ever had. We have twice a week pickup, once a week bulk, which is unheard of in any other community in Putnam County, as far as I know, and once a week commingled recycling. And you couldn't contract on your own to get the same service we did with a private carter on your own. So it's a good deal, even though it's more money than it was last year.
Right, and we did take the lowest bid.
Yeah, and we
so-
all, exactly, we took the lowest bid.
And I think,
And I think it's important to point out, Lynn, that we have to take the lowest responsible bid as a matter of law.
Right.
And,
Yes.
and the carter that had the contract previously would have increased it about $500,000.
Right, and didn't fill in the page that they needed to.
And we
so-
have to take it as a matter of law, because when it wasn't taken, it ended up in the Court of Appeals case that resulted in us really having to take it. So that was the AAA against the town of Southeast.
Now, part of this budget, which I'm going to ask Ron to explain to the public as well, Ron and I work together. I work 365 days. He works 364 and a half. But anyway, we work on the budget all year long. We work on everything. I'm in his room probably 3 to 4 times a day. He's tired to see me. But I need you to explain with the tax cap, well, when we prepared this budget for this evening, okay, and revised it, you know, Liz was part of it, we sat in the room, and actually, she relied on Ron and I to go back and work on the bottom line number, which we're seeing tonight, and will be posted on the web for everyone to review. It'll be on there tomorrow, so you can look at line by line and make comment accordingly. But the main thing is we were short, you know, I don't have the exact number, but we were short. We had some money left over in the garbage district, okay? I think it was 250, around?
298,000.
Okay, 298,000. We had a surplus. So the $400,000 was reduced because we used that surplus. We were short around $50-something thousand dollars?
Around 40.
Okay, 40. He's going to, 10,000 when you're dealing with millions is peanuts in my mind. But anyway, so we balanced out the budget. So right now, we're coming in at the tax cap 1.84, but I need you to explain to, you know, the town board, every budget since I've been here we prepare, there's a credit that's given. So can you explain how that works and why it's 4.14 as opposed to not the 1.84?
Sure. When we do the tax cap, they give us a tax cap number. 2018 is 1.84, but also built into the tax cap calculation is to give you credit for increase in tax growth. When the controller's office, the real property services up in Albany, assessor gives an assessment every year. When those assessments, when there's an increase in assessments, they give you a tax growth number. So that's a number above the tax cap number. Also, because this year, as the town board has told you, in the past, we were treating the garbage as part of the tax cap. Well, when we took that out, what happens is our starting number for they always compare their 2007. For this 2018 budget, they compare what we raised the taxes in 2017, and they take the difference, and that's what your tax cap is. But when we determined that the garbage no longer had to be part of the tax cap, we were able to take a credit from last year of approximately $116,000. So when you take the $116,000 carryover credit, plus I think this year it's a 0.0057 tax growth, and there's another element that comes into this calculation also is they take into consideration your payments in lieu of taxes. We have a couple of IDA corporations out there who they pay payments in lieu of taxes. They don't get a tax bill. So the combination of last year's number and the number we have this year all plays into the formula, and what it worked out to, I believe, was close to 4.84%. So the 1.84% is the tax cap, but there's other factors that come into play.
Which are allowable.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Now, I'm gonna put you on the spot because, you know, we worked on this to get the numbers. It's more, I mean, I don't want people to think that we're not necessarily over-taxing them. I don't believe that we're doing that. I think we're taking every credit. I mean, every town, the county, everyone basically takes the same credits. They take as much as they're earned and allowed when they do the tax cap. So even if it's a 1.84, in the end, if you look at everyone's bottom line, it's not 1.84. In our case, it's 4.14 this year.
4.84, I believe.
I thought that's it. Okay, anyway, so is that your recommendation of how we would do it in the past and you continue to go forward, or would you look to change it?
No, I'm comfortable with the tax cap calculation that was done, and you know, with the numbers that are in this budget.
Okay. Any questions?
So the money we're taking out of contingency will still have enough or more than the controller recommends?
It's the fund balance.
The fund balance.
Right.
The state recommends the town have a certain amount of money and...
They come up with a reasonable number.
Right. So we're not raiding people's piggy banks or anything like that, right?
No.
No. Okay, thank you.
And again, I don't like that, it is a piggy bank, but the piggy bank is there for them. One, we get lower bond ratings. It really has a good effect for this town, because again, our bond rating went up. And, you know, we're gonna have the library referendum coming up, And if we have to, pay into that, we'll get a much lower rate, borrowing rate. Any borrowing we do when we buy vehicles and whatever, it doesn't sound like a lot, but, to go from one rating, we're at the higher rating now, I think it's a 2A compared to the 3A. And, it's better for us. We actually save money. So what money we get from the public is still being used for the public's good, and none of it basically goes anywhere else other than back to the public.
And we can have unforeseen expenses too. that are-
Yeah, I think what we're speaking about, just so that we're clear, are we terming the fund balance the piggy bank? Is that what we're calling it? Just so I understand what the heck it is.
No, I don't know what I don't know what
What, is that the, because right now, I think, once again, in 2011,
I call my IRA.
in 2010, under former supervisor Wright's, the general Fund A balance was $78,308. In 2011, it increased $20,000 to $98,371. What happened then when Tony, for the 2012, it increased $304,543.
Under mine, right?
Hay,
Yeah,
definitely.
okay.
From Wrights to Hay, it went from $98,371, and it had increased 20 over the former 2010. It went to $402,914. That was an increase of $304,543. So that's 11 and 12, which also was impacted by the library referendum. So we really put a lot of money into that fund balance under you. Well, here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, you put $304,543 is the difference from the prior year. Now, there's also, as we discussed with Ron, there's such an interaction between revenues, expenses, how you budget it. But the bottom line is, that was a large increase. The following year, it was $684,130. So by 2013, the general Fund A balance was $1,087,044. So let's face it, during those earlier years, it was a good thing, because then we revived the fund balance, which then ends up, as what we did is, in your words, tightening belts and the revenues, and I'm quoting you from back in 12 and 13. And right now in 16, it was $1,988,692. And it looks like it's going to be increasing for 18. So we have more than enough funds. It's going to increase, there's no doubt. When you look at the budget and what's going to happen with different lines, which probably won't be used, it's going to increase. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but what I'm saying is just realize that, that piggy bank, isn't getting raided, it's increasing, and we're healthy, and that's what you want to do.
But that had been discussed, but I also think that the people we can credit for this fund balance increase really, yes, we look at the budget, but thanks to Tony and Ron, this is what has happened over the last, 6 years?
Well, no matter what it is, we all do it. We're here as a board. I do work my butt off, Ron does, and we all do. The bottom line is, it was a very difficult thing. You remember me keep saying it was the Titanic when I got here and it already sunk?
Yeah.
That was my true feeling. And if you told me then that we would be where we are today, I wouldn't have believed it.
So from 2011, from 98,371, it's gone 2016, 1,988,692. It hasn't done anything but climb since 2010, when it was 78,308. So that fund balance has done nothing but climb every single year since then.
But could you imagine?
And revenues increased too. I
Well,
think more
it's an
taxes
interaction.
went up,
But
the economy got
it's
better.
how you budget. Look, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'm telling you right now, it's a good way to budget. We are now where the state controller kind of like blesses us. They're saying, you're right, you're in an area where we want.
But the fund day balance, I get it, but, once again, like I emphasized, and Ron said, no, there's no rule that says 10%, but rule of thumb was generally 10% of our budget, which would be $1,800,000. But at this point, what this budget right now, and once again, we'll look at it. I heard Ron, I've heard you, the board has heard everyone. It sounds like we're on a healthy path. We're not bashing or crashing, or however you want to say the crack with this board, and we've done it successfully every time, with one exception. And that's it. So my thinking right now is, I appreciate all the work that Ron has done. Clearly, we were, me, Tony, Willis, and I were here on last Thursday until whatever time, did a great job. We've reformulated it. We were talking to Ron even on the phone the other day when Carmel was blacked out for 2 hours, whatever it is. So I do appreciate it. It's a lot of work, and this is going to be the budget that you're going to put on for the public hearing, and then let's have all the public talk about it.
Okay.
Thanks, Ron.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Ron, want to bring me my pipe? Sure. Mike, you want to get up to speak?
Thanks, Ron.
Ron, thanks.
Is that what we had, the top?
Yeah, and the rest of it.
Good evening, everyone. Now everybody's working on the budget, and it's probably an appropriate time to bring up a condition that's existed for some time, and it happens to be our MS4 situation here in town. I've been the MS4 coordinator for almost the last 4 years, and I haven't been compensated for that. And I know it's a difficult time with funds, but everybody needs to be paid for what they do, and I put in extremely long weeks for the highway department alone, and I estimate that I put in between 15 and 20 hours a week for this as the MS4 coordinator, and as I said, for the last 4 years I have not been compensated, and it's I think time that I get paid for that, and I have tried to address the board individually to discuss this thing in the past. Over the few years I've discussed it with Tony, and it's high time that we make some kind of decision as to what I'm worth for that project. I have discussed it with other townships. There's approximately half the other towns in this county where the highway superintendent is not the MS4 coordinator. Some towns have specific MS4 coordinators to do the work that I do, which includes field inspections of almost every conceivable MS4 problem that we have in town, reporting them, making sure that they're in compliance with all the regulations, keeping compliant with the regulations, doing annual reports, and on and on. It's a very time-consuming thing. So I don't know exactly how to proceed with it now. We could take the average of what other towns pay. We could do it on an hourly basis. I dare say I'm not going to recuperate the amount of time that I put in, but I would be fairly reasonable. I'd probably accept something as little as 10 or 15 hours a week in pay for what I do, or we could do it on an hourly basis based on the amount of time that I actually put in. So I just like to give everybody an opportunity to think about that, and I know exactly how to proceed with it, but I'm welcome for comments from anybody on the board.
Mike, from the first time you were ever the highway superintendent, all right, so from that when you were appointed?
That's correct.
Okay. What did you do then as an MS4 coordinator that is different than what you do now?
I think the workload is increased. Probably for the first year or so, there was very little interaction with MS4 at all. And as I became more involved with the program and understand the program more, it just became doubly, if not quadruple, the amount of time that I did from the time that I was originally appointed.
Okay, can you sort of just, without, telling us every little thing you do, can you tell us what the difference was from when you first, in other words, you said not a lot to now a lot. So what did you do initially that now has increased, and what are you doing now?
Initially, I did very little. I did virtually nothing pertaining to the MS4, and actually didn't know that the MS4 was a part of the highway program. What was and will continue to be part of the highway is the roads themselves, the drainage systems, catch basins and inspections. But what increased was, I think, the amount of projects that are ongoing, anything from, and when it comes to MS4, anything over 5,000 square feet of disturbance requires a permit. And there have been exponentially more of those projects since I first took over till they are now. Just driving around on a daily basis, when you see disturbance or you see runoff in the roadways or in the creeks or in our storm sewer system, it requires reporting to the DEP, to the DEC, to the Board of Health. So the more familiar I became with the program, the more intense I react to the possible challenges or possible fines to the town for not reporting these disturbances.
So you know your budget, you know our budget for your highway superintendent department, for lack of a better word. Where would any increase fit into that budget? Where would you think we would, if indeed we were inclined to increase anything, where would that come out of your budget?
I would dare say we'd find a line the same. We recently had a MS4 field inspector that was hired by the town board to do a specific job that was taken from my budget. I'm not specifically sure which line that came from, but the funding was there and it hasn't been reduced. So I'm sure the funding is available. I can find exactly which line. We have a very extensive number of lines in my budget, probably 50 or 60 or more lines that pertain to each payment that's made for a variety of different services and computers, everything from computers to salt and sand and the like. I would be tempted to say that there would be funding available.
So you stated a range, so 10 to 15 hours a week or per hour. What basically is the sum? And just ballpark, what you think and how that would be structured? And, would it be $10,000 extra, $2,000, $50,000? What would you?
I would dare say that I would base that on any of the other townships in the county. I think that's legitimate. I'll do a analysis of that, which I have not, because I might have stood up here tonight and someone said that we're not going to address this. I work probably between 45 to 55 hours a week at the highway department alone, and free time isn't really a thing that I have to use for something that you're not going to entertain. If you feel that you would entertain something like this, I'd be more than happy to put a numerical value on it. And I think that would be based on the going rate in the surrounding townships.
So you're basically saying right now, Mike, that if we don't give you an increase, you're not going to perform the duties? I'm just trying to, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just want to be clear as to what's the message tonight. You're asking, to be compensated for work that you do, but if, like Liz said, we're not inclined to give you a raise or do that, just what will the outcome be? I mean, I don't see you as a man that's going to say, well, then I'm just not going to do it and walk away, but maybe that's exactly what you're saying tonight.
No, I'm not a person to shirk my responsibilities at all, but as I said, I've done it for almost 4 years for free. I would remain in the position that I'm in until you can find someone to fulfill the obligation that the town has. And it's not going to be another 4 years, but I'm not going to continue to do it for free.
Well,
Go ahead.
what I'd probably say is, it would be difficult if we're going to consider anything, quite frankly, not to have some kind of an analysis or a thought as to what you're asking. I mean, I'm looking at the budget here for the highway, and, you know, I see what's been budgeted for superintendent highway personal services. For 18, it's $157,149. Now, I know that is not your salary. It's a few, you know, it's a mix-in for the highway department itself, but.
That's his secretary and.
Right, exactly. So I just want everyone to know that you don't make, we didn't budget you for $157,000 yourself. But in looking at what I have here, I would certainly, you know.
Well, I don't think we've touched the, like, the deputy superintendent, the dollars in that amount. I'm just saying.
Well, if there was,
you know.
at one point, as we know, we had discussed the thought of a deputy superintendent. So I'm not entirely certain, would a deputy superintendent be someone that would be subsumed in the $157,000 2018 figure, or would it be something else that we would add? I don't know.
No,
I don't believe it would,
You don't believe it would what?
that it would be included in that figure.
it's not.
Okay, no, that's what I'm saying. I just want to make it clear. So if it's not included, then it would be, we would have had to give extra money to a deputy superintendent? That's what I don't know. Just, in other words, if we considered a deputy superintendent position, right? And if Mike came in and said, I want to have a deputy superintendent, would that be money that we would have added to this budget?
We would have taken it,
Plus,
if it wasn't a separate line, whether it be in a sub-contingency line. I mean, again, that's part of it. If you brought someone in, we'd have to negotiate all the money for the position, depending on what the person would come in at. Say they came in at 50, is it a part-time, whatever. I have built into the budget money to provide that service to him, and it's been there for the past 3 years. But it's part of the contingency money, which I would not release, because at some point in time, you may want to fill it.
Okay, so this year you budgeted 125 for the contingency and the sub-contingency.
Yeah.
So you're saying that's
Some
where.
of that money could be used for that position.
Gotcha.
And not
Okay.
all, but again,
No, I got
thinking
it.
ahead, there's where we would grab the money to do that.
Got it,
And,
okay.
and the fact is that there's been a lot of discussion about a deputy superintendent, which would be extremely helpful to reduce my overwork situation. And the pitfalls that came with that were the individual that would be selected would have to wear a multiple number of hats. They were expected to be the MS4 person. They were expected to be a deputy superintendent to work with me with all the daily things that we do at the highway. They were also had to have a CDL so that they could plow snow in the winter at the very least, if not utilize them on a daily basis if someone were sick and we needed an extra individual. So they basically had to have a strong computer background, something of some engineering background, the truck driving background, and be a hard worker. And the position was budgeted at $50,000. My laborer makes more than that, I believe. And it was a very difficult position to fill. It was a very valuable position. But at that rate, I did interview a couple people over the last year or so who just weren't interested in a position with that much responsibility for that kind of money. So either we readdress the amount that we could offer an individual to do that job with those qualifications, and that would alleviate me from the MS4 entirely probably, and I could spend more time on highway things and less time on MS4. Very viable means, but I think we need to address the funding for that position.
So we would create the deputy supervisor of highways, or you would create it?
He would.
You
It's
would create
his
it.
appointment.
Got it. Okay, just wanted to clarify.
And the
that.
salary
We're just funding
is
it.
not in concrete, whatever, again, you find someone, you come to the board. The 50,000, you might have misunderstood. It's approximately what I have set aside for the position. Doesn't mean you have to be hired for that. I mean, there's a lot of contingencies in my budget, I know, but I got 50,000. If you hire someone for 70,000, I have to find $20,000 elsewhere, whether it's in your budget, town budget, wherever, to hire the person. So the 50 is just something I've set aside for the position. That doesn't mean that's the final number of the position. That's a misunderstanding.
But then if what we're saying is, just to play out a couple of streams of thought here, if what Mike is saying is he can't find someone qualified to be someone who would accept such a job based on what he's saying is 50, even if he gets one, let's say, if we say, oh, we got it for 70, he takes away the MS4 duties. What is it that, you know, if you come up and you say to us, well, what I'd like is 20,000 more, and I'll do that, and there'll be no deputy supervisor of highways, then in essence, at a minimum, we save 30,000, because now we're giving Mike 20,000 more. He does all the MS4 duties, and you're gonna still have to work very hard, because then we're not gonna approve a deputy superintendent of highways after we give you 20,000. I still think I need to know what you're looking for, because quite frankly, if it's something like 50, 60,000, I don't, you know, speaking from my own opinion, I don't see that. But if what we're saying is that you are in a position that you're gonna say to us, well, I'd like to have 20,000 more, I'll give you my word, there'll be no deputy supervisor, deputy highway superintendent, and then at that point, if we were going to hire a deputy highway superintendent for 50, then we just save 30. So I don't know. I mean, I think really what it comes down to is we need to have figures. And we need them fast, because next week is
To
a
a
public
degree,
hearing.
but you are talking about two separate things.
Absolutely.
The deputy superintendent would have vastly more responsibilities than just the MS4. So you're not taking this person on just for that one
But
specific
what
purpose.
I'm saying to you, though, is that if you're telling me right now that your responsibilities...
telling you that.
Your 55 hours a week kind of subsume what a deputy highway superintendent would do, but that you're really working hard and you're looking just for compensation for the MS4 piece, okay? And you're still going to do what is essentially a highway superintendent and a deputy highway superintendent. You're going to say to us, I'm going to do all of that work, and I'm going to do the MS4. If I hired a deputy highway superintendent that do the MS4, that do work, and it would alleviate me, so I wouldn't have to work the 55 hours. But if you're willing to commit that you're going to do all of the work, including the MS4, and we're going to give you an additional sum of 20,000 for that MS4, I'm shooting out a figure.
Yep.
All right? Then at that point, we're not going to approve a deputy highway superintendent for you for $50,000 because we just gave you the 20 and we're saving the 30. So, I mean, it's really up to you in terms of what's in your mind as regarding what you want to do.
Well, it's in the town's mind, and it's in the town's best interest, and we've got to decide what the town wants to do and what they don't want to do. There's a lot of work that's not getting done right now. There just aren't enough hours in a day for one person to do all the work that's necessary. So to be in compliance, to get everything accomplished, the pie in the sky would be this new person who could share the responsibilities. He wouldn't solely take on all the MS4 because I would continue to do my portion of the field inspections, my portion of whatever. It would be a shared position between the both of us. So in the best scenario, I would say the deputy superintendent with sharing the responsibilities of so many things. And we have these things started back in the 70s being built where there's probably 100 or so MS4 projects that need constant monitoring, regulation, and repairs. It's just not getting done.
So perhaps maybe what we should do is look into maybe when you interviewed whoever you interviewed and they said 50,000 isn't enough for what you're asking, you know, did they counter and say, well, maybe if you give me 70? I'm just using the figures that were just thrown out.
No, that's fine.
At that point in time, maybe that's the answer. And then we can shift the responsibilities, the bulk of the responsibilities at a minimum, from you to the deputy highway superintendent, and then we don't have to really be concerned about you having to perform all this work and you having to come to us and ask for more money. I don't know. I'm just throwing out some thoughts.
I agree, and I appreciate that. And if it's to continue the way it does, though, because I am putting in the extra time for that position, That was the original portion of the compensation that I seek. So the perfect scenario, I think, is the one that you mentioned. We got a person who can help in all of those things. It may cost a little more money, but in the long run, we'll get a much better job for the town.
Okay. Does anyone else before I go on?
No, you can, are you going to?
I have more than you would have, so go.
No, I mean, one of my concerns, Mike, and I'm, we talked about this, and I've been thinking about it, but one of my concerns is that you're an elected official, and as an elected official, the salary is, you knew what, I understand that it's increased, and I don't want to be argumentative, but you knew pretty much, because you had served some of the time, what the salary was and what your duties were. So that I have a bit of a problem with that. I have no problem with cost of living increases, but I do with a major jump. And that's just my opinion on that, so.
Can I answer that?
Sure, of course.
At no point in time ever, when I put my hand in the air and swore myself in to be the highway superintendent, was there ever a mention of any MS4 work. And it's been thrown in my face that it just comes with the job, but it doesn't come with the job. Carmel's highway superintendent doesn't do it. Kent's highway superintendent doesn't do it. I don't believe Putnam Valley's does. I can give you the actual statistics. I think that
No,
it's,
and I know that, but traditionally in Southeast, I'm not saying what we
the
do is
position
right.
was highway superintendent. It wasn't MS4 coordinator.
Right, but Kevin was doing work, our previous.
Kevin isn't Mike Bruin, and Kevin did very, very little as far as MS4 was concerned. We can go back to what Dick Palmer did, but it has no reflection
No, I
on what
know,
Mike Bruin
I know
does.
going back to Jim and Dick, that was a different time and the MS4 regulations were a glimmer in the eye.
At no point did I ever put my hand in the air and say, I want to uphold the laws of the MS4 in
So
this
when you
state.
were first appointed, you didn't do any MS4 then, is what
I
you're
was,
saying?
I wasn't aware that the MS4 was a part of that, no. And as I progressed in years, more and more it was like, okay, go and look at this silt pond, go and look at this, see what you can do about that runoff. And next thing you know, it developed into a very, very time-consuming, very responsible job.
Well, I can understand it being more. I just see the timeline of being appointed and then running for the part of the term and then running again. That's what I see where we disagree on this, but that's just a disagreement. I wish this town had actually implemented special drainage districts for new subdivisions. And if we had had the will to enforce it back then, we'd have the money to do this, or we'd have more money to do this, but that's.
I'm sorry, you were talking to him. I didn't hear what you just said.
Way back when, I think before you were even on the board, for new subdivisions, they were called special drainage districts.
Got it.
And they were never implemented, and when one it was tried, it was actually your old neighborhood, it was a massive problem because of the
Got it,
taxes
yep.
they paid. So that's what I'm alluding to, that I'm sorry we didn't have the
And what,
will
and
back
what
then.
did those special
No, I couldn't hear you.
districts, how
They
did
were
that
special
affect-
drainage districts because there had to be more drainage put in as time went on, more and more like you're finding with MS4, and it was something the town back then just really didn't have the will to enforce. So that it's literally water under the bridge, so.
Or down the drain.
Yes, or down the drain, but that's, I just wanted to point that out, so.
Okay.
I'm done.
Mike, can you just find out, well, I know Tony's going to, if I could get some kind of a thought process, at least I would like to have some kind of thought process as to what monies you're looking for. I mean, we're doing a lot of talking about something that we really don't know.
Well, he said the average, he's gonna
Right,
look into
yeah.
it and find
Yeah.
out what other
Well,
people
well,
make.
that's what I
He's
wanna
gotta get back to us.
re-
I would
Reemphasize
like
that.
to
said he
base
didn't
that
do
on
it yet
fact
because
rather
he
than
doesn't know.
conjecture.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be curious in our conversation that we had, that's what I want.
I mean,
What do other towns get as far as MS4, what they pay for it? Just so I can make an informed decision.
I think that if they were very similar in kind, that would be a good baseline,
Right.
but they would have to be similar in kind.
Right, I mean, exactly. I mean, I don't know how much MS4 projects exist in Patterson compared to Southeast, compared to Carmel. I mean, I assume Carmel's the bigger town, they probably have more. Phillipstown, you know, so I would just like to know what, you know, what everyone else gets so we can make an
I'm
informed
going to give you an
decision.
idea in a minute, yeah.
Right, and then, but other town employees in the past, there is a history when we increase their responsibilities and they do more, they've been getting stipends or added money, salary for doing more work from when they were originally
Well,
hired. So
it-
I don't think it's something that's like, you know, out of the blue, you know, suggesting that.
I mean, stipends exist in this town.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Stipends
there
do
are-
exist
there are-
because workload was increased. And
Are you talking about elected officials?
some elected officials and some.
And he's looking at me
appointed.
when he says that. He's looking at me when he says that.
But
Actually didn't look at
I
it.
didn't look at it.
Well, no, you weren't looking at me, but it was mentioned earlier tonight. I mean, yes, the supervisor receives a salary for the position, which is like $78,000, and I get around $19,000 as the budget officer, and I believe I've done a good job with that. So.
And
you
that
wanna
was
take it away? Do
also,
it.
when you say stipend,
I'm
now,
expecting it, I'm telling you now.
that's always been in the budget. We knew you know, we discussed, you took it away from someone and added it
I mean, I
back
don't
in,
know when it
but was-
started that there was a supervisor, when the budget officer was a separate line, if that,
I think it's been
obviously
like
that
that
was
for a
before.
It's
long
been,
time.
it's
Right, so
it's
there's
been a
always-
long
And you
time.
took it away from the previous supervisor
Right.
because he wasn't doing the job.
And that's right, we did.
And I
then
think
we
you're
gave
looking
it
at me
back
like
to
I
him.
don't.
No, I think what, no.
All I'm saying, Tony, is he's not out of left field making a request, asking for additional revenue for something that is
No,
not
but this was
part of his-
budgeted, Bob. There is a difference. There
What's
is a
budgeted?
difference. There, it's in our, the,
But at some point, it wasn't in the budget, and it was put in pre all of us.
Yeah, what it
And it's not
basically
just
is
Tony, there's other
it-
elected officials.
Is
that
it
get
someone's
stipends.
position that an elected official can't get more money? That's all it is. And it doesn't matter, and Tony's done a very good job, and that's the end of the story. I simply think that the best thing for us, after Tony relates what he's gonna do about other areas, is to ascertain what it is that you want and how we can best work to make your department more productive, because what I'm hearing tonight is a lot more about deputy highway superintendents, and maybe that's a way around it. That's all I'd like to see that.
I think it's a very good option. So we'll look, if the salary is negotiable, as it seems to be that we found out tonight that it is, then I will look into that, filling that position a little more aggressively and see what kind of money it would take to get a person to take that position. And I'd be very happy to have that in lieu of raise myself. It suits my needs just fine.
Residency, is that required for deputy highway superintendent?
I don't believe it is, but
I would strongly recommend
it is for highway superintendents.
Right,
so
well, obviously, you're an elected official. I just don't
believe,
know.
actually, as a matter of fact, I believe it is a requirement, residency is a requirement for a deputy.
Because
So it narrows the field somewhat, once again.
Because there is a succession plan, I guess, you know, God forbid, or you quit or something, that person would most likely become acting highway superintendent until the next election, so I'm assuming there would be a residency requirement.
Well, like I said,
Even though it's
given,
appointed.
given that information, I'll readdress the challenge of finding an individual, and maybe we can, I mean, I've done it for almost 4 years. I'm gonna, as I said, I'm gonna continue to do my job, and we'll get all the reporting done as we always have, and we'll look into the prospect of filling that position.
And we have always been in compliance with MS4 regulations since you took over?
I'm sorry?
Have we ever not been in compliance with MS4
No.
regulations since you've taken
No,
over?
we've always managed to get all our reporting in.
Yeah, okay, I'm just asking. I know some communities sometimes fall out of compliance. and-
no.
Okay.
And every year, as a matter of factly, this was actually upcoming year is the new MS4 regulations, and it's becoming more challenging. As a matter, just to visualize, our MS4 regulations used to be about that thick, and the new regulations are that thick. There's almost 10 times more regulations in paper than there was a year ago. It's become quite a challenge.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay. One, I don't believe you do work for free, at least as far as it comes to MS4. It's been part of the duties of, going back to Jim Lawler, Kevin Palmer, and of course yourself. I do agree that the requirements of the amount of work that's done does increase. Yes, it does. But, you know, every time someone runs for office now, it's not like you're just new to the position tonight that we need this extra money. I mean, your salary since you've been here has increased over $10,000. I think mine's gone up maybe $2,000, okay? And because the town board gets treated different than any other elected official in the town, because every time there's a pay raise, they're guaranteed the pay raise. You get whatever any other member of the staff gets, union, non-union, you get that percentage. We don't get it, and I don't want more money. It's not about me. It's just I do believe you're being, I think, fairly compensated for the job. In 2013, when you actually started in 2013, you were making 87 and change, and now this year you're slated to make 97,000. Now I'm hearing,
93.
no, you're making 97,312 in this budget.
For 2018.
For 18.
No, that's the number.
For the upcoming budget, okay.
This
I appreciate-
budget today, so you came in 13 to 18, so in 5 years, you've climbed to almost $10,000, thereabouts. But every time you've run, you knew, I hope you knew, that you were doing MS4. In other words, in 14, and again in, let's see, 14,
And 15.
and then, no, I'm trying to think when you were elected in
It was 15.
Here's,
Well,
no,
he
here,
had won
here's a,
2
no.
years in a row.
Yeah.
He ran and ran. He was appointed by the town board in 2013. He ran in 2014
Yes.
to fill the unexpired term.
Right.
He ran in 2016 for a full.
No, 15.
No, the next year.
It was 15. We're always odd years, Tony.
He
He ran in
ran-
15.
he ran-
15. He ran when I ran.
We ran in 15?
Yes.
Yes.
You
She
were
didn't have an
17.
opponent.
Okay.
It's easy for you.
Okay, so if it's 15, it was 15, but the position always was the MS4 coordinator, was the highway superintendent, okay?
By whose standards? It was never, ever brought to my attention when I took this job that the MS4 was part of it.
But when you
I
ran for the
grant-
position the last 2 times, you had to know about it.
I have argued the point for the last couple of years that I needed help doing that,
And we tried to give that to you.
okay? But it hasn't happened, so.
Well,
we-
and then you had the opportunity to hire a deputy. Again, there was a confusion about the 50,000. That was, the number was, that's what I put in the budget. It wasn't the whole number, because I don't know what the number's gonna be.
I don't know
Anytime I
what
budget
other
something-
number to look at. If it's in the budget and that's what it's budgeted for, and
It's not
and
in the budget, so you don't know what it's budgeted for.
It's in the contingency.
I just put money aside knowing that we offered you that position. I put a number out there. I know it's not gonna be enough, because, you know, you have, if the person gets hired at 50,000, they're gonna be making closer to probably $90,000 with benefit packages, et cetera, retirement, everything. Actually, 50,000 might get up to 100,000. I mean, every orange shirt I see out there working, they get a lot less, but when you look at them, they're making between $105,000 to $115,000.
But like he's saying, they with overtime, and they actually.
No,
take
not without
more.
overtime, just.
No, I know, but they do make overtime, and.
Oh, yeah, but
So
I'm just
he-
saying that even though the number, whether it's 50, by the time you put in the benefit package, if a person comes in at 75, they're
But he
over
said he had a
100.
problem finding somebody. for
Well,
that.
but whatever, he now knows it's a different number, okay? Now, I got a bunch of notes here, so let me just look at this. Now, if you are now working by what you just stated there, you're working 45 to 55 hours a week, is that what you're stating?
That's what I said, yeah.
Okay, so if you're doing that now with all this extra work, how many hours were you working before then?
I'm sorry?
If you're working today, right now, you're reporting to the town board, you're working 45 to 55 hours a week, and you're spending 15 to 20 hours of that a week doing MS4, how many hours were you working when all these years that you've been here?
How many hours have I been working all these years I've been here?
Yeah, well, you said tonight you do 45 to 55 hours a week. I don't doubt.
I can document,
I'm not asking you that, but if you're doing 45 to 55 now, and you're overburdened with the MS4, how many hours were you doing when you weren't doing that job? I'm of the contention that you're being paid to do a job, MS4 is part of it. Almost everything that happens with MS4 has to do with the highway department. We have no other department that can clean the catch basins and do the MS4 work. I mean, Levon's in special district, he doesn't have the equipment, so it falls, in this case, in this town, and I'm gonna go into the other towns in a minute, that it falls on the shoulder of the highway superintendent. The other previous two highway superintendents did it. Has the amount of work risen during that time? I'll be the first one to say the answer to that is yes. But if you're doing 45 to 55 now, and you're doing all this MS4 work, what were you doing when you weren't doing the MS4 work? There's something's not, the numbers don't jive.
I would dare say for the first year or so that I did very little of it because it was just not even brought to my attention that that job was required, that the simple indoctrination to this job, and I monitored my hours for the first year that I worked here, and I have a record of that, as does the town clerk, and I think that I averaged for the first year somewhere in excess of 65 hours a week. In the wintertime, I was...
And you weren't doing MS4?
I was doing
Well, you took over-
I was doing very minimally.
Okay, so you're doing 65
And-
hours with no MS4, and now you're saying tonight you're doing 45 to 55 with all this MS4 work.
It's a rough estimate. I haven't kept my hours in a long time. This is summertime hours. I know that it's typical for me to exceed 90 hours a week in the wintertime when the weather's a problem. That's not for an annual average.
Okay, let me ask you
I
another question.
could document my hours if you want me to do that for a month or so, and I will give you exactly what I do.
No, I'm just
I don't
trying.
want to cut you off, Tony, but I mean, I heard the man, he wanted to get paid for what he feels he's doing.
And I feel he's paid
Then
too.
I've heard now that, he's also saying, I'll accept a deputy supervisor. I hear that, quality of life is just as important for him, and he'd be willing to step back from asking for the additional monies if we can actually find, a second in command, for lack of a better word. So I think that might be more the option to try to pursue. I mean, we just sat here and listened to an animal dog control officer and talking about how, one individual can't work 7 days a week, 365, and we're basically saying the same thing about Mike now. You can't keep working all these hours, 24 hours a day and I know I'm exaggerating. I know he just said he does like 65, but I just feel like, do we have to continue?
Right.
Can't we just?
I also never remember having another employee come in front of the town board publicly requesting additional money. I mean, I know two other town employees that requested executive session, and we granted it for them,
But
explaining
it's an
that.
elected position, Bob, that is different.
Yeah,
It is
well,
different.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just going to
I mean, I
add,
think
All I'm
he's
saying
gonna
is,
give us the
can we
information.
look into the deputy supervisor? If Mike is saying he didn't realize that we could up the salary or whatever, it kind of ends the discussion. Let's just pretend, using Liz's numbers, it's $70,000, and then the next person applies.
We're leaving here this evening, there's not gonna be a stipend looking for this.
We're gonna look into it.
Well, he has
Well,
to
but
come,
Mike-
he has to come back to us and say, again, I want an extra $2,000 in a stipend to do the job,
Or
or,
a 10 or whatever.
or hire me a deputy supervisor,
Well, that's-
and we,
so
and
that's
we
what
pay
we-
prevailing wage, whatever that wage is, 75, 80,000, and
it's
that's it.
not
I
even,
just don't
it's not even
understand-
winter yet, and I'd like to just bring one thing to your attention, that last Sunday, I got in my truck around noontime, started doing road inspections and trees down and reporting that to my men. I finally got home at 8 o'clock that night and got my first call from the state police at 11:30 that night on Sunday night, and worked straight through Sunday night into Monday morning when my men came to work at 7 o'clock. I worked through till 6 o'clock that night and went home Monday night for the first time in almost a day and a half. That's how seriously I take my job. I take it all winter. If my men are at work, I'm at work. I'm at work a lot of times when they're not. I was at work for almost 8 hours before I called my men in that day. When the trees started falling across the road and blocking the highways, that's when I called my men in. People in the past were very liberal with the overtime, and they'd sit home and call their crew chief in, call their men in to go to work, and just go out and run the roads and find out what's wrong with the roads. I do that myself. I do it all winter long. You and I have had this discussion before about how frugal I am with overtime, how much money I've saved this town by spending the hours out there in my truck, all hours of the day and night, keeping this town safe. And to come in and ask for a little request like this was pretty benign. So
Well,
if we can
I think there's
resolve
other
it through a
superintendent of highways
deputy,
do
I'd
the
be
same.
very happy to do it that way, but I'm not gonna continue to work for free.
If you could, Mike, just let us know what other highway superintendents make, just out of curiosity.
I got it right here.
Has all that, Bob.
I got it right here. You want to know what they make?
Okay, okay, fine, I didn't know that. And then also,
Look,
what other communities
we've been doing
do
this
for
for, we've been
MS4?
doing this for a long time. Now, I don't have an updated sheet, but you can go add it accordingly. Carmel is the highest paid, biggest town, 117,000. I'm not going to go into the smaller ones. Kent, 79,000. Patterson, 106. Phillipstown, 89. Putnam Valley, 78. And at the time, our Southeast Superintendent of Highway was making 93,000. So he was number 3 on the list. And I asked Patterson, you know, I thought Patterson, he should be number 2 on the list because of the size of the town compared to whatever. But in Patterson, that person does the special districts work similar to Levon with the garbage.
Not just for garbage, yeah.
Well,
Not the
but,
Yeah,
water
but that's
district.
town.
not the water district, but for the garbage,
No,
which
it's not
is,
town
No,
water.
that's right, not in.
but it's whatever.
They,
So
they
that's
have,
the
they have no
difference there.
water and sewer, they have a garbage district, I believe, that man
One
does.
municipal and one.
Now, just
He
to go back.
does not do the MS4.
Okay, and our highway superintendent is the only person in the county, town-wise, that is the MS4 coordinator, okay? So, but again, it's grown with the job. It's not like, you know, when he came in, we gave it extra. It's been there and it's grown with the job, okay? Whether it's a stipend or not, it's grown with the job. Now, in Carmel, the MS4 coordinator is a part-time position, it's a part-time position within the position of the town engineer. In other words, we have a town engineer who is an outside contractor. So in Carmel, it's the town engineer. That engineer gets paid $95,000 a year. But and the engineer does multiple jobs within the town, but he is the MS4 coordinator at $95,000. And the highway does the work in the field. Almost everyone that does that. The highway department has to do the work, because that's the one, okay? In Kent, the MS4 coordinator is a gentleman, it's a contractual, part-time employee for the town. He acts as the environmental consultant and has multiple duties, not just the MS4 coordinator, and his pay is $7,500 to $9,000 a year.
I'm sorry,
7,500 to 9,000.
Got it.
Okay, and that's for the MS4 coordinator. He does, like I just mentioned, he's contractual, it's part-time, acts as the environmental consultant, and has multiple duties, including the MS4 coordinator. Pay $7,500, $9,000. I confirmed that with the Maureen Fleming, the supervisor. Patterson, the MS4 coordinator, is the town supervisor. He's also the town planner, and he gets absolutely nothing. I feel bad for Rich. But he does a lot of work. So he's the coordinator and town planner, gets no additional pay. Phillipstown, the MS4 coordinator, is a part-time environmental law, has multiple duties, and he's paid specifically, not just for the MS4, he does part-time environmental and whatever. So any of these numbers that we come up, and I put to be determined, I mean, I can call back and get the specific number, but again, it's not a lot of money. In Putnam Valley, the MS4 coordinator is a grant writer. They do the buildings and grounds. The person's their IT person. Pay, he didn't have the exact number, but it's not even 40 or 50, but I don't have the exact number. And here in Southeast, the MS4 coordinator is a highway superintendent, and pay right this moment, or will be $97,312. So it varies in each town. We don't have to have the highway superintendent be the MS4 coordinator. I mean, I don't want to be it, okay? I don't feel I'm qualified enough to be the MS4 coordinator.
So I think what we have to see is, let's say if we say no to Mike, and Mike steps down from doing the MS4
Okay.
coordination, not highway superintendent, MS4 coordination, what would our choices be and what would it cost us?
Okay.
If it's gonna cost us more money, then we're
Well, we
shooting
have to
ourselves,
see.
well, we need to find out ASAP.
Okay, well, again, we talked about this a while back, and it could possibly be the Town,
Tom Fenton, the town engineer.
Jacobson.
Tom Fenton, who
Of Jacobson.
works for Nate Jacobson, who I heard this evening would do it, probably would do it for free. But I said.
Well, it's not for free.
Okay.
He would not add any additional because he's out there with the superintendent of highways on every aspect of what it
And
is.
I
He only
said-
comes one day a week.
And I said,
Thursday.
we need to see that this gentleman is going to say, and he's a great guy, Tom Fenton, that if he took over all of the duties of an MS4 coordinator, because he already works and does work within that MS4 parameter, that he would not, he would say, that's fine, I'm already doing it, or I won't charge anything. That's the letter I want to say.
Okay, or if he does, here's what I want extra.
Correct.
Fine.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, I don't think that that would really work well. You need someone who's in the town all the time. If he comes down one day a week, figure we have close to a little over 90 miles of road, you wouldn't want to pay him his rate to travel all of those roadways every week to find out if we have any violations. And that's what I currently do. I travel all our roads weekly, and in doing so, wear both those hats. We look at the trees, look at the ground, look at any places that have disturbance, and report to them. So I don't think that Tom Fenton could do that, or he could do that. He's certainly qualified to do that, but I don't think the town would want to pay him $131 an hour to ride around and look for areas of disturbance.
And
So-
that's part, and you're saying that's part of your MS4 duties?
That's what I do. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we'll table it, and I guess we get more
Well, I
information.
Well, first of all, the way the budget's been prepared.
That's important.
If the dollar amount, whatever, I don't want, whatever you guys choose to do, whether it's another deputy superintendent of highways, a stipend, or whatever you're proposing, I'm telling you now, in my budget, the way I budget it, I can find the money, okay? And again, the $50,000 used early on is just, I just put a number there. If I put nothing, and we need to hire someone for
Well, there
60.
seems to be some miscommunication, because he
What?
thought it was 50,000,
Well-
and that's what, I mean, this is what, I don't.
Look, whatever it may be, I'm just saying, I put a number there. Is it 50? You might get lucky, and there's some of these people retired. I know one guy, my God, he'd do anything. $50,000 is a lot of money to a retired guy, and they have the experience, okay? But whatever. 50,000 is just a number I plug in, it's a contingency. I don't know. It's been there every year I keep it there, because at some point in time, it may happen. So when it comes, I got $50,000 to grab. I don't need I don't want to say 80, 90, of course there's benefits, but we've got half the money if it includes benefits or whatever it is. So tell us the number and we go from there. That's why I have contingency in the budget. You don't know what the future is. Okay, anyway, this does not have to be in the budget. I'm telling you now, there's enough wiggle room in the budget, the way it's been prepared, to grab something. If a truck breaks down, I mean, he has his own budget, there's money if a truck breaks down. But if something, not, I want to say catastrophic happens, we have enough money in our budget, we have some wiggle room. At one point down, we had none, now we have some. So let's move on with this here now. You'll report back accordingly with whatever they've requested of you. We'll get an answer on this one here and go
Had
from
we-
there. But it doesn't have to be.
Had
part
we
of the
had
budget.
that discussion a week or two ago, or a couple months ago when I came in, I wouldn't be here tonight, wasting the town board's time.
Well, you have to talk to the town board. And you
Okay.
can't talk to us individually, you got to talk to us as a town board.
If the position was available, we could work, if we could have worked this out by getting a deputy and increasing the salary, I wouldn't have wasted my time coming down here tonight. We would have,
Well, no one's wasting time.
No,
You know,
I-
you know,
wasting time.
There's nothing like, making sure that we all understand each other, and I don't think it's a waste of time. I think.
Good.
I'm very happy with
It's certainly
this
not a,
discussion
yeah,
tonight.
it's not a waste of my time, and I'm sorry if it
appreciate
was
that.
for you, but
And I
it was
appreciate all your
enlightening to me.
effort.
I mean, the only thing going forward, I would request, and there seems to be a disconnect between the highway department and the town board. Sometimes, like, when people get hired, quit, resign, I'm finding out things secondhand, thirdhand, I don't know if, whatever, who's not telling us or whatever, but I'd just like to know more.
Well, I don't know until I get the
No,
article.
no, I don't know.
No, we're not,
I'm
he's not
just-
accusing
right,
you.
I'm just saying,
There's a
that
disconnect.
there seems to be a disconnect, and we
He,
just need to be more in the loop.
he provides a document to us when somebody's
Like,
hired,
if I go, right, I mean, I don't know, sometimes we're even hiring people.
but
and I would
that's
like
his
to know.
job to do.
I know that, but I'm
So
just
if you
saying,
wanna
if
know,
you
they
could
wanna
just
know when
keep
you're
us in
hiring
the
someone.
loop,
And when
you
Doug
know,
someone go, they
going
want to know,
forward.
but he does.
Right.
It comes
Well-
through an RPC, which everyone gets a copy of.
I know, but I'm saying if Mike decides we're gonna hire someone for whatever, I would just, you know, an email to the town board, hey, FYI, I'm looking to hire whoever, you know, a mechanic or whatever, just so we know, you know, that's all.
And don't send me any recommendations, right?
No, well, no, just so that we're in the loop, that's all.
Okay.
Thanks,
Okay.
Mike,
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I make a motion to go into the regular portion of the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution, Veterans Cold War Exemption. Now therefore be resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Southeast hereby adopts local law number 8 of 2017, which would enact an amendment to Chapter 126 of the Town Code of the Town of Southeast entitled Taxation, Article 3 entitled Veterans Exemptions, to provide a partial real property tax exemption to qualified veterans having served during the Cold War for the period that they own their qualifying residence. And be further resolved that the town clerk be and is hereby is authorized and directed to A, enter a said local law in the minutes of this meeting in the code book of the town of Southeast, and B, give due notice of the adoption of said local law by filing such with the Secretary of State of New York within the time required by law. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 2, a resolution certiorari settlement. I'm going to spell it.
Krasnicki?
And Krasnigi.
QI.
Krasnicki.
Is it Q?
Yeah, that's a Q.
That's a Q.
It's a Q.
Up top, it's a
No, I
Q.
got,
No, it's a Q.
But you wrote it
Q.
as a G on the agenda. but
oh, is it a Q?
It's a Q.
It's a Q.
On
It's
this-
supposed to be a Q, but it's a G, right?
Hey, who's right?
It's on the resolution as a Q. That's correct. Thank you.
Well, they look similar. Okay, so it's N-I-Q-I.
Yep.
Okay. Non-ductile? No.
No, it's not a, no
Okay.
proton, I assure you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank God.
Now therefore be resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendations of the professional advisors and authorize the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent judgment, and/or order on consent in accordance with said recommendation for the following. Petitioner, tax ID KRASNIQI, tax ID number 56.81-1-11, year 2017, assessment 90,000, settled assessment 65,000. And be further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute any and all stipulations, consent orders, or other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Next is to make a motion to provide the document you have in front of you to approve the preliminary 2018 town budget, which will be put on the web tomorrow, showing a percent increase, decrease of 4.1%, and an increase, decrease, meeting the tax cap of 1.84%. This is for the public hearing. It can be changed after the public hearing if necessary. So moved.
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone wish to speak? Yes. Oh, not you, Mr. Lord. I mean, when I saw Peter go like that, I said, yes. Won't mention any last name.
Hi, John Lord. Just had a question. The budget officer, that's you?
Me.
And you get
You're
a,
going to fire me too?
I'm just want to ask a question. So you, does it have to be the supervisor, or could it be
It
anybody
could
on
be
the town
Bob,
board?
but I wouldn't trust him.
It's the town supervisor or the supervisor's appointment.
It could be the accountant, the town
Yeah, it
accountant.
could be the town accountant.
And
Could be a firm.
Give a stipend around?
I think you mentioned that 1 year you wouldn't allow the supervisor to be the budget officer?
No, they reduced the salary.
Oh, you reduced?
Well, we,
They did,
Yeah.
yeah, they reduced it to 2.
we reduced it, but in reduced meaning we said, you don't get that budget officer amount.
Okay, but he did get something.
Yeah, he was paid as
Budget
being a
officer is
supervisor.
a stipend.
Okay.
For doing additional work. It's not his elected salary.
Okay.
His elected salary, you cannot reduce it during someone's term of office. But any stipends you could take away. We felt at the time, Liz and I were the only ones on the board then, we
Well,
felt that he
Roger.
wasn't doing, well, Roger, but
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
had to
out of
have
us.
3, you had to have 3 for that.
So
vote.
those years, that was when Michael Wrights was on, and that's when the budget went
You didn't do it.
to hell.
You only did
We did it Michael
once.
Wright's
We did it 1 year.
last year.
1 year, not the first year that
Yeah.
you guys were on.
Well, we
but
couldn't
this-
because we
We weren't here.
we didn't, you budget, like we're budgeting.
Oh, right. You're
to
budgeting for
18,
next year.
So
Right,
we weren't, you know, we had no control over that.
It only happened for 1 year though, didn't it?
His
Yeah,
last year because.
the last year,
Yeah.
because,
Right, that-
So his last year, you had control of that, so you
Yes.
told him that he
Correct.
couldn't get that stipend.
Doing,
And-
to do the 2012 budget, it would have been.
Right, so, and that
Yes.
year we were down
Because
to
you did it in
what was the
2011.
fund balance that
sorry?
year? 98,000 was the fund balance at the end of that year?
at the end of that year, it was approximately 98,000. It rose 20,000 from the previous year when Bob and I weren't
Okay.
on the board.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the audience? Town board members?
I look forward to everyone coming out for the public hearing on the budget. It's
Next
next
week.
Wednesday, not Thursday.
And just in closing, when we close, just remember the victims of the terrorist attack in New York City yesterday. I think it was a horrible event.
And entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion, we close tonight's meeting.
Second by?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.